In the heart of a bustling American city where skyscrapers pierced the sky and luxury cars zoomed past on wide boulevards, there lived a man who defied all expectations. James Carter, at the ripe age of 82, was a multimillionaire who chose to live a life that most would consider ordinary, even austere. His weathered hands and sun-spotted skin told the story of a man who valued hard work and simplicity above all else. James's modest two-bedroom house stood in stark contrast to the opulent mansions that dotted the outskirts of the city. The small, well-tended garden in front burst with colorful blooms, a testament to James's dedication and care. It was here, among the fragrant roses and cheerful daisies, that James found his peace. As the early morning sun peeked over the horizon, James shuffled out onto his porch, a steaming cup of black coffee in hand. His worn flannel shirt and faded jeans hung loosely on his thin frame, a far cry from the tailored suits one might expect a wealthy man to wear. But James had never been one for pretense or showing off. His wealth, carefully hidden from the world, was a secret he guarded closely. "Another beautiful day," James murmured to himself, his voice gravelly from years of laughter and tears. He settled into his favorite rocking chair, the wood creaking softly beneath him, a sound as familiar and comforting as an old friend's voice. As he sipped his coffee, James's mind wandered to the events that had led him to this point in his life. It had been nearly 3 decades since that fateful day when he'd won the lottery, a windfall that had changed his life forever. But unlike so many others who'd come into sudden wealth, James had chosen a different path. The memory of that day was still vivid in his mind. He could recall the trembling of his hands as he'd clutched the winning ticket, the disbelief that had washed over him in waves. But even in that moment of shock and elation, James had known that this money was a responsibility, not just a gift. "I won't let it change me," he'd vowed to himself then, and it was a promise he'd kept all these years. James had always believed that true value lay not in material possessions or outward appearances, but in one's actions and character. It was a philosophy he'd lived by long before the lottery win, instilled in him by his hard-working parents, who'd raised him to appreciate the simple things in life. As he rocked gently, watching the neighborhood come to life around him, James reflected on the choices he'd made. He'd invested wisely, ensuring financial security for himself and his family for generations to come. But he'd also continued to live modestly, finding joy in the small pleasures of life, tending to his garden, losing himself in the pages of a good book, and most importantly, spending time with his beloved daughter Emma and grandson Liam. The thought of Liam brought a bittersweet smile to James's weathered face. His grandson, now a teenager, was the light of his life. Despite the challenges Liam faced with his health, the boy's spirit remained unbreakable, his laughter a balm to James's soul. James's reverie was interrupted by the cheerful chirping of his old flip phone. With a chuckle at his own resistance to modern technology, he fished the device out of his pocket and answered. "Good morning, Dad," Emma's warm voice greeted him. "How are you doing today?" "Just fine, sweetheart," James replied, his voice softening with affection. "Enjoying my coffee in the morning sun? How's our boy doing?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and James felt his heart constrict. He knew all too well what those pauses could mean. "He had a rough night," Emma finally said, her voice tight with worry. "The pain was pretty bad. But you know Liam, he's still smiling this morning, talking about that car show he wants to watch later." James nodded, even though Emma couldn't see him. Liam's resilience never ceased to amaze him. Despite the cruel hand that fate had dealt him with multiple sclerosis, the boy faced each day with a courage that humbled James. "I'll come by later today," James said, his mind already planning the visit. "Maybe we can watch that show together. I might not know much about those fancy cars, but I'm always willing to learn from my expert grandson." Emma's laugh, tinged with gratitude, warmed James's heart. "He'd love that, Dad. You know how much your visits mean to him." As they said their goodbyes, James's gaze fell on the old station wagon parked in his driveway. It had served him well for over a decade, reliable and unassuming, much like James himself. He couldn't help but chuckle at the contrast between his car and the sleek, expensive vehicles Liam loved to watch on TV. Standing up with a slight groan, James made his way back into the house. The interior was as modest as the exterior, comfortable but sparsely furnished, with family photos adorning the walls. Each image told a story of love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds that tied the Carter family together. James's eyes lingered on a recent photo of Liam, taken at the boy's last birthday celebration. Despite the wheelchair that had become a permanent fixture in his life, Liam's smile was radiant, his eyes sparkling with joy. It was that spirit, that zest for life in the face of adversity, that inspired James every day. As he prepared for his day, James's mind was already working, formulating plans for his visit to Emma and Liam. He knew the power of small gestures, a favorite treat, a new book, or simply his undivided attention in brightening Liam's day. It was in these acts of love and kindness that James found his true purpose, far beyond the numbers in his bank account. Later that morning, as James tended to his beloved garden, his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, called out a greeting from across the fence. "Good morning, James. Those roses are looking absolutely spectacular this year." James straightened up, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "Good morning, Helen. Thank you kindly. They do seem to be thriving, don't they?" Mrs. Thompson, a kindly widow in her 70s, had been James's neighbor for over 2 decades. Like many in the neighborhood, she had no idea of James's wealth. To her and others, he was simply the friendly, hard-working man next door who always had a moment for a chat or a helping hand. "I was wondering," Mrs. Thompson continued, a hint of hesitation in her voice, "if you might be able to help me with my vegetable patch this weekend. My arthritis has been acting up something fierce, and I'm afraid I've fallen behind on the weeding." James's face softened with compassion. "Of course, Helen. I'd be more than happy to lend a hand. How about Saturday morning? I can come over after I've finished with my own garden chores." The relief and gratitude on Mrs. Thompson's face were evident. "Oh, James, you're a godsend. Thank you so much. I'll bake you one of my apple pies as a thank you." James waved off her offer with a gentle smile. "No need for that, Helen. Neighbors help neighbors. That's just how it should be." As Mrs. Thompson headed back into her house, James returned to his roses, his heart light. This was the life he had chosen, one of simplicity, kindness, and quiet generosity. The millions sitting in his bank account meant little compared to the joy of helping a neighbor or the smile on his grandson's face. The rest of the morning passed in a peaceful rhythm of gardening and household chores. As lunchtime approached, James prepared a simple meal of soup and sandwiches. Sitting at his small kitchen table, he found his thoughts once again turning to Liam. The boy's fascination with high-end cars had always amused James. While he couldn't quite understand the appeal himself, he loved listening to Liam's excited chatter about horsepower, acceleration, and sleek designs. It was during these animated discussions that Liam seemed to forget about his illness, his eyes shining with the same wonder and enthusiasm as any other teenager. As he finished his lunch, James's gaze fell on the day's mail, neatly stacked on the corner of the table. Among the usual bills and advertisements was a glossy brochure that caught his eye. He picked it up, realizing it was an advertisement for a local luxury car dealership. Normally, James would have tossed such an advertisement straight into the recycling bin. But today, something made him pause. The cover featured a striking red Ferrari, its gleaming surface reflecting the sunlight in a way that seemed almost magical. "Liam would love this," James murmured to himself, a plan beginning to form in his mind. He had always been cautious with his lottery winnings, saving and investing wisely. But as he stared at the Ferrari on the brochure, he felt a sudden urge to do something extravagant, something that would bring immeasurable joy to his grandson. The idea both excited and terrified him. It went against everything he had practiced for years, his frugality, his modesty, his desire to blend in. But the image of Liam's face lighting up at the sight of such a car was powerful enough to make James reconsider his long-held principles. As the afternoon wore on, James found himself unable to shake the idea. He puttered around the house, dusting shelves that didn't need dusting and reorganizing drawers that were already tidy, all the while wrestling with the notion of making such a grand gesture. Finally, as the sun began to dip towards the horizon, James made his decision. He would visit the dealership just to inquire. There was no harm in looking, after all. And if it turned out to be possible, well, the joy it would bring Liam would be worth any discomfort James might feel. With a mix of nervousness and determination, James began to prepare for his visit to Emma and Liam. He packed a bag with some of Liam's favorite snacks and the latest car magazine he'd picked up at the store. As an afterthought, he slipped the dealership brochure into his pocket. As he locked up his house and made his way to his old station wagon, James felt a flutter of excitement in his chest. For the first time in years, he was considering doing something completely out of character, something that went against his usual prudent nature. But as he thought of Liam's brave fight against his illness, James knew that sometimes love called for extraordinary measures. Pulling out of his driveway, James Carter, the secret millionaire in simple clothes, set off on a journey that would change not just his life, but the lives of those around him in ways he could never have imagined. The sun was setting on another day, but for James, it felt like the dawn of a new adventure. As James Carter's old station wagon rumbled down the suburban streets towards his daughter Emma's house, the evening sky painted a picturesque backdrop of soft pinks and oranges. The familiar route, lined with neatly trimmed lawns and modest homes, reflected the life James had chosen for himself, unpretentious, serene, and filled with quiet contentment. His mind wandered to the simple pleasures that made up his days, the feel of rich soil between his fingers as he tended to his beloved garden, the crisp rustle of pages turning in a well-worn book, the warmth of sunlight on his face as he sat on his porch, watching the world go by. But above all, the joy that filled his heart when he spent time with Emma and Liam. As he pulled into Emma's driveway, James couldn't help but smile at the sight of the ramp leading up to the front door, a necessary addition after Liam's condition had worsened. It was a stark reminder of the challenges his grandson faced, but also a symbol of the family's resilience and adaptability. Emma opened the door before James could even knock, her face lighting up at the sight of her father. "Dad, you're right on time. Liam's been asking about you all afternoon." James enveloped his daughter in a warm hug. "How could I stay away when my two favorite people are here?" he said, his eyes twinkling. As they entered the house, the sound of a television drifted from the living room, accompanied by Liam's excited voice. "Mom, is that Grandpa? Tell him to hurry. The show's about to start." James chuckled, making his way to the living room. There, in his wheelchair positioned in front of the TV, was Liam. Despite the pallor of his skin and the thinness of his frame, the boy's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Grandpa," Liam exclaimed, his face breaking into a wide grin. "You made it! Come on, sit down. They're going to show the new Ferrari model today." James settled into the armchair next to Liam's wheelchair, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "Wouldn't miss it for the world, champ. Now, you'll have to explain all the technical stuff to your old grandpa, okay?" As the show began, James found himself swept up in Liam's excitement. The boy's knowledge of cars was impressive, and he eagerly shared facts and trivia about each model showcased. James listened intently, asking questions and marveling at his grandson's passion. "See that, Grandpa?" Liam pointed at the screen, where a sleek red Ferrari was being unveiled. "That's the latest model. It can go from 0 to 60 in just 2.9 seconds. James whistled in amazement. "That's faster than I can get out of bed in the morning," he joked, eliciting a giggle from Liam. As they watched, James couldn't help but notice the wistful look in Liam's eyes. It was a look he'd seen before, a mixture of awe, longing, and the unspoken knowledge that some dreams might remain just out of reach. During a commercial break, Emma brought in a tray of snacks. "I thought you boys might be hungry," she said, setting down a plate of cookies and glasses of milk. "Thanks, Mom," Liam said, reaching for a cookie. "Grandpa, did you know that the first Ferrari was built in 1947? But Enzo Ferrari had been involved in racing for much longer before that." James took a sip of milk, nodding appreciatively. "Is that so? Tell me more about this Enzo fellow." As Liam launched into a detailed history of Enzo Ferrari and his legendary car company, James exchanged a glance with Emma. Her eyes held a mixture of love and concern, the look of a mother who delighted in her child's passions but worried about the future. The evening passed quickly, filled with car talk, laughter, and the warmth of family togetherness. As the show ended, Liam's excitement was palpable. "Oh, that was amazing!" he exclaimed. "Grandpa, can you imagine what it would be like to ride in one of those?" James felt a twinge in his heart. "It must be quite something," he said softly, his hand reaching unconsciously for the brochure in his pocket. As Emma helped Liam prepare for bed, James found himself alone in the living room. He pulled out the dealership brochure, studying the gleaming Ferrari on its cover. The seed of an idea that had taken root earlier that day began to grow. Later, as James prepared to leave, Emma walked him to the door. "Thanks for coming, Dad," she said, her voice low. "You have no idea how much these visits mean to Liam and to me." James hugged his daughter tightly. "You two mean the world to me, sweetheart. How's he really doing?" Emma sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "The doctors say the MS is progressing faster than they'd hoped. He's in more pain these days, though he tries not to show it. But you saw him tonight. Those car shows, they're like magic. For a little while, he forgets about everything else." James nodded, his resolve strengthening. "He's a brave boy, our Liam, and he's got the best mother a child could ask for." As he drove home that night, the streets quiet and bathed in moonlight, James's mind was racing. The joy in Liam's eyes as he watched the car show, the wistful longing in his voice, it all echoed in James's heart. He thought about the money sitting in his bank account, carefully saved and invested over the years. He'd always been cautious with it, seeing it as a responsibility rather than a ticket to luxury. But now, faced with his grandson's silent wish and the knowledge of Liam's worsening condition, James began to see his wealth in a new light. Arriving home, James made his way to his modest study. Settling into his old leather chair, he opened his laptop, a concession to modern technology that Emma had insisted upon. With determined fingers, he began to research Ferrari dealerships in the area. As the night deepened, James found himself caught between two worlds. On one side was the frugal, modest life he'd chosen, the belief that true value lay in actions rather than possessions. On the other was the possibility of fulfilling a dream, of bringing unimaginable joy to his beloved grandson. The next morning found James in his garden once again, the rhythmic act of weeding and pruning helping to clear his mind. As he worked, he thought about the life he'd lived, the values he held dear. He remembered his own childhood, growing up in a family that had little in terms of material wealth, but was rich in love and support. His parents had taught him the value of hard work, the importance of integrity, and the joy of helping others. These were lessons he'd carried with him throughout his life, even after the lottery win that could have changed everything. But as he tended to his roses, James realized that sometimes love called for grand gestures. Sometimes it meant stepping out of one's comfort zone to bring happiness to others. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, James made his decision. He would visit the Ferrari dealership, not just to look, but with the intention of making his grandson's dream come true. The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. He, James Carter, in his worn flannel shirt and faded jeans, walking into a luxury car dealership with the intention of buying a Ferrari. The idea seemed almost laughable, but then he thought of Liam's face, alight with excitement as he talked about horsepower and acceleration. He thought of Emma's worried eyes and the unspoken fear that Liam's time might be shorter than they hoped. With a deep breath, James straightened up, brushing the dirt from his hands. He looked at his modest home, his simple garden, the old station wagon in the driveway. For a moment, he felt a pang of uncertainty. Was he betraying his principles? Was this extravagant purchase at odds with the life he'd chosen to live? But then he remembered something his father used to say: "The greatest wealth a man can have is the ability to bring joy to others." With renewed determination, James headed inside to clean up and prepare for his visit to the dealership. As he changed into his cleanest pair of jeans and a button-down shirt he reserved for special occasions, James couldn't help but chuckle at his reflection in the mirror. "Well, old man," he said to himself, "you're about to have quite an adventure." As he grabbed his keys and headed out the door, James felt a mix of nervousness and excitement bubbling up inside him. He was stepping out of his comfort zone, venturing into a world of luxury and extravagance that he'd deliberately avoided for years. But as he started his trusty old station wagon, James knew in his heart that he was making the right decision. Because sometimes love meant doing the extraordinary, and for Liam, James was ready to do just that. With a deep breath and a silent prayer, James Carter, the modest millionaire, set off on a journey that would change not just his life, but the lives of many others in ways he could never have imagined. The Ferrari dealership awaited, and with it, the chance to make a young boy's dream come true. As James Carter's old station wagon made its way through the bustling city streets towards the Ferrari dealership, his mind drifted back to that fateful day nearly 3 decades ago when his life had changed forever. The memory was as vivid as if it had happened yesterday, etched into his consciousness by the sheer magnitude of its impact. It had been a crisp autumn morning, much like any other. James, then in his early 50s, had stopped at his local convenience store on his way to work at the factory, where he'd been employed for over 2 decades. On a whim, he'd purchased a lottery ticket, something he did occasionally without much thought or expectation. That evening, as James sat in his small living room, absently watching the nightly news, the lottery numbers were announced. With mild curiosity, he pulled out the crumpled ticket from his pocket and began to check the numbers. One number matched, then another and another. James's heart began to race as he realized that every single number on his ticket matched those being displayed on the screen. His hands trembled as he double-checked, triple-checked the numbers, scarcely daring to believe what he was seeing. "I've won," he whispered to the empty room, his voice barely audible. My God, I've won." The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief, excitement, and overwhelming anxiety. James found himself thrust into a world he'd never imagined, one of wealth managers, financial advisors, and sudden, intense media scrutiny. As the reality of his $140 million win sank in, James faced a decision that would define the rest of his life: how to handle this unexpected windfall. Many in his position might have immediately quit their jobs, bought mansions and sports cars, indulged in luxuries they'd only dreamed of before. But James, shaped by years of modest living and the values instilled in him by his parents, took a different approach. After the initial shock wore off, James sat down at his kitchen table, a notepad in front of him, and began to plan. He thought about his daughter Emma, then a college student with dreams of becoming a teacher. He thought about his community, the struggles many of his neighbors faced, and the good that could be done with this money. Most of all, he thought about the kind of person he wanted to be, lottery win or not. After careful consideration and many long discussions with financial advisors, James made a series of decisions that would guide his life post-win. He would continue to live modestly, resisting the urge to flaunt his newfound wealth. A significant portion of the money would be invested wisely to ensure long-term financial security for himself and his family. He would establish a secret charitable foundation to help those in need, focusing on education and healthcare initiatives. He would continue to work at the factory, at least for a few more years, to maintain a sense of normalcy and purpose. As James implemented these decisions, he found himself facing unexpected challenges. Friends and distant relatives suddenly appeared, many with sob stories and requests for money. The media, hungry for a rags-to-riches story, hounded him for interviews and photo opportunities. Through it all, James remained steadfast in his commitment to living a life of integrity and simplicity. He politely but firmly declined most requests for handouts, instead directing those truly in need to local charities, many of which he anonymously supported. He avoided the spotlight, turning down interview requests and keeping his win as private as possible. At work, James continued to clock in each day, much to the surprise and curiosity of his co-workers. When asked why he still worked despite his millions, he would simply shrug and say, "A man needs purpose, and I find mine here." As the years passed, James's quiet generosity began to make a difference in ways both big and small. Through his foundation, scholarships were established for underprivileged students. A new wing was added to the local hospital, and numerous families received help during times of crisis, all without knowing the source of their good fortune. Emma, with her father's support, finished her education and became a dedicated teacher, never forgetting the value of hard work, despite the family's hidden wealth. When she married and had Liam, James felt his heart expand with a love he hadn't known was possible. Now, as he navigated the city streets towards the Ferrari dealership, James reflected on the path his life had taken since that lottery win. He'd managed to stay true to his values, to find joy in simplicity, and to make a positive impact on the world around him without seeking recognition or praise. But as he thought of Liam, brave, spirited Liam, facing challenges no child should have to face, James realized that perhaps it was time to bend his own rules, just a little. The Ferrari he was considering buying wasn't about flaunting wealth or indulging in luxury for its own sake. It was about bringing joy to a boy who had shown more courage and resilience than most adults James knew. As the sleek, modern building of the Ferrari dealership came into view, James felt a flutter of nervousness in his stomach. He was about to step into a world far removed from his usual experiences, a world of luxury and extravagance that he had deliberately avoided for decades. Parking his weathered station wagon in the lot, James couldn't help but chuckle at the contrast it presented next to the gleaming sports cars on display. He took a deep breath, straightened his simple button-down shirt, and stepped out of the car. "Well, here goes nothing," he murmured to himself as he walked towards the dealership's glass doors. As James reached for the door handle, he caught his reflection in the polished glass. The man staring back at him was not the image of a millionaire that most would expect. His clothes were clean but well-worn, his face weathered by years of outdoor work, his demeanor humble and unassuming. For a moment, doubt crept in. Would they even take him seriously? Would they dismiss him outright, assuming he couldn't possibly afford their high-end vehicles? But then James thought of Liam, of the joy this purchase could bring him. He thought of all the times he'd chosen to live below his means, to save and invest rather than spend. He had earned this moment, not just through the luck of a lottery win, but through years of careful stewardship of that unexpected bounty. With renewed determination, James pushed open the door and stepped into the world of luxury automobiles. The showroom was a stark contrast to his modest lifestyle, all gleaming surfaces, sleek lines, and an air of exclusivity that seemed to permeate every inch of the space. As he stood just inside the entrance, taking in the sight of the magnificent machines before him, James felt like a fish out of water, but he reminded himself why he was here. For Liam, for the chance to bring an extraordinary moment of joy to his grandson's life. With that thought foremost in his mind, James Carter, the secret millionaire in simple clothes, stepped further into the dealership, ready to embark on an adventure that would challenge his comfort zone and, unbeknownst to him, set in motion a series of events that would touch the lives of many. The scent of leather and polish filled the air as James made his way deeper into the showroom, his eyes wide with wonder at the automotive marvels surrounding him. Each car seemed more impressive than the last, their sleek lines and vibrant colors a testament to the pinnacle of automotive engineering and design. As he approached a particularly striking red Ferrari, similar to the one Liam had admired on TV, James couldn't help but reach out to touch its gleaming surface. The cool, smooth metal under his fingertips made the reality of what he was about to do suddenly very tangible. "Can I help you, sir?" A voice interrupted his reverie. James turned to find a young man in a crisp suit, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The salesman's eyes darted between James's weathered appearance and the high-end vehicle he was admiring, clearly trying to reconcile the two. "Yes, actually," James replied, straightening up and meeting the young man's gaze. "And I'm interested in purchasing a Ferrari for my grandson." The salesman's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but to his credit, he quickly schooled his features into a professional smile. "Of course, sir. My name is Ryan. May I ask what specific model you're interested in?" As James began to explain his intentions, drawing on the knowledge he'd gleaned from Liam's enthusiastic car discussions, he was unaware that his presence in the dealership was causing quite a stir. From his office overlooking the showroom, Andrew, the dealership manager, watched the interaction with growing displeasure. To Andrew, appearances were everything, and the sight of a plainly dressed elderly man discussing high-end sports cars with one of his salesmen did not fit with the image he wanted for his dealership. With a scowl, he decided to intervene. James, meanwhile, was starting to feel more at ease as Ryan patiently answered his questions about various models and features. He was just beginning to think that perhaps this experience wouldn't be as intimidating as he'd feared when a sharp voice cut through their conversation. "Is there a problem here?" James turned to see a middle-aged man in an expensive suit striding towards them, his face set in a stern expression. Ryan straightened up immediately, a flicker of nervousness crossing his face. "No problem, Mr. Harrison," Ryan said quickly. "I was just assisting this gentleman." "I'll take it from here," Andrew interrupted, dismissing Ryan with a curt nod before turning his attention to James. His eyes swept over James's simple attire, and his lip curled slightly in disdain. "Sir," Andrew began, his tone condescending, "I'm not sure if you're aware, but our vehicles are rather exclusive. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at a different dealership." James felt a flash of indignation at the man's dismissive attitude, but he kept his voice calm as he replied, "I'm well aware of the exclusivity of your vehicles, Mr. Harrison. As I was explaining to Ryan, I'm interested in purchasing a Ferrari for my grandson." Andrew's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. "A Ferrari? Sir, these cars cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't mean to be rude, but—" He trailed off, gesturing vaguely at James's appearance. For a moment, James was tempted to reveal his true financial status, to put this arrogant man in his place. But years of cultivating humility held him back. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and met Andrew's gaze steadily. "Mr. Harrison," he said, his voice firm, "I understand your skepticism, but I assure you, I am fully capable of purchasing one of your vehicles. Now, if you're not interested in making a sale today, I'm sure I can find another dealership that would be happy to have my business." Andrew's face flushed red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. The idea that he might be turning away a legitimate sale clearly didn't sit well with him, but his prejudice was equally apparent. "Sir," Andrew said, his voice strained with forced politeness, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps if you could provide some proof of your ability to make such a purchase, we could continue this conversation." James felt his patience wearing thin. This was not how he had envisioned this experience, and the manager's rudeness was a stark reminder of why he had chosen to live modestly all these years. Wealth, he realized, often brought out the worst in people, both those who had it and those who assumed others didn't. As he opened his mouth to respond, possibly to tell Andrew exactly what he thought of his behavior, a new voice entered the conversation. What seems to be the issue here, gentlemen?" All three men turned to see an elegant woman approaching, her presence commanding immediate respect. James noticed Andrew's demeanor change instantly, his arrogant posture giving way to something almost subservient. "Mrs. Woodward," Andrew said, his voice suddenly oozing charm, "I was just explaining to a gentleman that our vehicles might not be quite what he's looking for." The woman, whom James assumed must be the owner given Andrew's reaction, turned her piercing gaze to James. But unlike Andrew's dismissive look, her eyes were sharp and assessing, seeming to look beyond his modest appearance. "And what exactly are you looking for, Mr.?" she asked, her voice kind but authoritative. "Carter, ma'am." "James Carter," he replied, feeling a strange mix of relief and nervousness at her arrival. "I came here today hoping to purchase a Ferrari for my grandson." Mrs. Woodward's eyebrows rose slightly, but her expression remained neutral. "I see. And has Mr. Harrison been helpful in assisting you with this purchase?" Before James could respond, Ryan, who had been hovering nearby, stepped forward. "Mrs. Woodward, if I may, Mr. Carter was just explaining to me his interest in the latest model we have on display. He seems quite knowledgeable about the specifications." Mrs. Woodward nodded thoughtfully, then turned back to James. "Mr. Carter, why don't we continue this conversation in my office? I believe we may have gotten off on the wrong foot here, and I'd like to personally ensure that you receive the service you deserve." James nodded, relief washing over him. As he followed Mrs. Woodward towards her office, he couldn't help but feel a small sense of vindication at the shocked look on Andrew's face. As they walked, James's mind raced. He hadn't expected his visit to the dealership to become quite so complicated, but he reminded himself why he was here, for Liam. With that thought bolstering his resolve, he prepared himself to share his story, hoping that in doing so, he might not only fulfill his grandson's dream, but also teach a valuable lesson about judging others based on appearances. Little did James know that this encounter was about to set in motion a chain of events that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone in that dealership, in ways none of them could have anticipated. As James followed Mrs. Woodward into her office, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. The plush carpeting muffled their footsteps, and the walls were adorned with framed photographs of sleek Ferraris and smiling customers. It was a world far removed from his modest home and simple lifestyle. Yet here he was, about to potentially make one of the largest purchases of his life. Mrs. Woodward gestured for James to take a seat in a comfortable leather chair across from her desk. As she settled into her own chair, she fixed James with a kind but scrutinizing gaze. "Now, Mr. Carter," she began, her voice warm but professional, "why don't you tell me a bit more about your interest in our vehicles? I must admit, it's not every day we have someone come in looking to purchase a Ferrari for their grandson." James took a deep breath, his weathered hands clasped in his lap. He realized that this was his chance to explain, to make Mrs. Woodward understand why this purchase meant so much to him. "Mrs. Woodward," he started, his voice steady despite his nervousness, "I know I might not look like your typical customer. Truth is, I've lived a simple life by choice for many years now. But my grandson, Liam, he's the light of my life, and he's facing challenges no child should have to face." Mrs. Woodward leaned forward slightly, her interest piqued. "Go on, Mr. Carter. What sort of challenges?" James felt a lump form in his throat, but he pressed on. "Liam has multiple sclerosis. He was diagnosed when he was just 8 years old. The doctors, they say his condition is progressing faster than they'd hoped." He paused, collecting himself before continuing. But despite everything, Liam's spirit remains unbroken. He has this passion for cars, especially Ferraris. You should see his eyes light up when he talks about them or watches them on TV. It's like, for a moment, he forgets about the pain and the limitations his condition imposes on him. Mrs. Woodward's expression softened, a look of genuine empathy crossing her face. I see. And you want to make his dream of experiencing a Ferrari come true? James nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Exactly. I know it might seem extravagant, but if I can bring that kind of joy to Liam, even for a short while, well, that's worth more than any amount of money to me. There was a moment of silence as Mrs. Woodward seemed to contemplate James's words. Then, to his surprise, she stood up and walked over to a small bar in the corner of her office. "Would you like some water, Mr. Carter? Or perhaps something stronger?" she asked, her tone suddenly more casual. "Water would be fine, thank you," James replied, watching as she poured 2 glasses of water and returned to her seat. As she handed him a glass, Mrs. Woodward's demeanor changed subtly. The businesswoman facade seemed to slip away, replaced by a more genuine, compassionate persona. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice softer now, "I want to apologize for the treatment you received out there. It's not how we aim to conduct business here, regardless of a person's appearance or background." James nodded appreciatively, taking a sip of water before responding. "Thank you, Mrs. Woodward. I understand that my appearance might have been misleading. I've chosen to live modestly despite having the means for more." Mrs. Woodward's eyebrows raised slightly at this, but she didn't interrupt. "You see," James continued, feeling more at ease, "many years ago, I won a substantial amount in the lottery, but instead of letting it change who I was, I decided to live simply and use the money wisely. I've been fortunate enough to help others quietly over the years, but this is different. This is for Liam." As James spoke, he could see a mix of surprise and respect dawning on Mrs. Woodward's face. She leaned back in her chair, regarding him with newfound interest. "Mr. Carter, your story is quite remarkable. Not many would make the choices you have in the face of such wealth. But tell me, why a Ferrari specifically? Surely there are other ways to bring joy to your grandson." James smiled, a fond look in his eyes as he thought of Liam. "You're right, there are, but Liam, he's always been fascinated by Ferraris. He can recite facts and figures about every model. When he watches them on TV, it's like he's transported to another world, one where his illness doesn't exist. I want to make that world real for him, even if just for a little while." Mrs. Woodward nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I see. And have you considered which model you're interested in?" James pulled out the brochure he'd brought with him, pointing to the sleek red Ferrari on the cover. "This one caught my eye. It's similar to a model Liam was excited about recently, but honestly, I'm open to suggestions. I want it to be perfect for him." As they began to discuss the various models and features, James found himself relaxing. Mrs. Woodward was knowledgeable and patient, explaining the intricacies of each car in terms he could understand. She seemed genuinely invested in helping him find the perfect vehicle for Liam. As their conversation progressed, James felt a growing sense of excitement. This wasn't just about buying a car anymore, it was about creating a memory that would last a lifetime. He could already imagine Liam's face lighting up at the sight of the Ferrari, the joy in his grandson's eyes as they took it for a spin together. However, as they delved deeper into the specifics of the purchase, a new concern began to gnaw at James. He'd lived so long under the radar, keeping his wealth a secret from nearly everyone. How would he explain this sudden, extravagant purchase to his family, to his neighbors? "Mrs. Woodward," he said, interrupting a detailed explanation of the car's engine specifications, "I have a rather unusual request. Is there any way we could keep this purchase discreet?" Mrs. Woodward looked at him curiously. "Discreet? In what way, Mr. Carter?" James sighed, trying to find the right words. You see, very few people know about my financial situation. I've worked hard to maintain a normal life, to avoid the complications that often come with wealth. I want to surprise Liam with this car, but I don't want it to change how people see me or my family. Understanding dawned on Mrs. Woodward's face. I see. Well, Mr. Carter, customer confidentiality is something we take very seriously here. I'm sure we can arrange for a discreet delivery and payment process. Perhaps we could even discuss ways to temporarily store the vehicle until you're ready to reveal it to your grandson. Relief washed over James. That would be perfect, thank you. As they continued to iron out the details, James felt a mix of excitement and nervousness building within him. This purchase was so far outside his usual behavior, yet it felt undeniably right. For Liam, he was willing to step out of his comfort zone to do something extraordinary. Little did James know that his act of love was about to set in motion a series of events that would not only bring joy to his grandson, but also touch the lives of many others in unexpected ways. As he and Mrs. Woodward shook hands, finalizing the details of the purchase, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just buying a car. It was the beginning of something much bigger. As he prepared to leave the office, Mrs. Woodward's voice stopped him. Mr. Carter, I want you to know that your story, your dedication to your grandson, it's truly inspiring. I have a feeling this Ferrari is going to bring more than just joy to Liam. It's going to create a ripple effect of kindness and generosity. James smiled, touched by her words. Thank you, Mrs. Woodward. I certainly hope so. As he walked out of the dealership, the weight of the decision he'd just made settled on James's shoulders, but it was a weight he was glad to bear, knowing the happiness it would bring to Liam. He climbed into his old station wagon, the contrast between it and the gleaming Ferraris in the showroom more stark than ever. Driving home, James's mind raced with plans and possibilities. How would he present this gift to Liam? How would he explain it to Emma? And what unforeseen consequences might this decision have? Little did James know that his simple act of love was about to change not just Liam's life, but the lives of everyone at the dealership and beyond, in ways he could never have imagined. As James Carter's weathered station wagon disappeared from view, the Ferrari dealership buzzed with an energy it hadn't experienced in years. The encounter with the unassuming millionaire had left a lasting impression, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions and reactions among the staff. Abigail Woodward, the owner of the dealership, sat behind her desk, her mind replaying the conversation with James. In her years of running the business, she had encountered all types of customers, from flamboyant celebrities to tech moguls, but never someone quite like James Carter. His humility, his devotion to his grandson, and his quiet strength had touched her deeply. With a sigh, she reached for her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Ryan, could you come to my office, please, and bring Andrew with you?" Minutes later, a knock on her door announced the arrival of the two men. Ryan, the young salesman who had first approached James, entered with a mixture of curiosity and nervousness on his face. Behind him, Andrew Harrison, the dealership manager, wore an expression of barely concealed annoyance. "Take a seat, gentlemen," Abigail said, gesturing to the chairs in front of her desk. As they settled in, she fixed them both with a penetrating gaze. "I think we need to discuss what happened out there today." Andrew straightened in his chair, a defensive tone creeping into his voice. "Mrs. Woodward, if this is about that old man, I was simply trying to protect the interests of the dealership. You can't expect us to take seriously every person who walks in off the street claiming they want to buy a Ferrari." Abigail's eyes narrowed slightly. "That old man, Andrew, just purchased one of our most expensive models. More importantly, he taught us a valuable lesson about judging people based on appearances." Andrew's jaw dropped, his face flushing with a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief. He actually bought a car. But how? He looked like he could barely afford a used sedan, let alone a Ferrari. "That's precisely the point," Abigail said, her voice sharp. Mr. Carter is a lottery winner who chose to live modestly and use his wealth wisely. His purchase today was an act of love for his grandson, who is battling a serious illness. Ryan, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I knew there was something special about him. The way he talked about cars, about his grandson, you could feel the sincerity in his words. Abigail nodded approvingly at Ryan before turning her attention back to Andrew. This incident has made me realize that we need to reassess how we approach customer service in this dealership. Our goal should be to treat every potential customer with respect and dignity, regardless of their appearance or background. Andrew shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But Mrs. Woodward, surely you understand the need to maintain a certain image. Our clientele expects a level of exclusivity. Exclusivity should never come at the cost of basic human decency, Andrew, Abigail retorted. What happened today was unacceptable, and it's clear that changes need to be made. She paused, her gaze moving between the two men. Starting today, we're going to implement a new training program for all staff, focusing on unbiased customer service and the danger of prejudgments. Ryan, I'd like you to take the lead on this. Ryan's eyes widened in surprise. Me? But I'm just a junior salesman. Abigail smiled. You showed excellent judgment and customer service skills today. I think you have a lot to teach our team about treating all customers with respect. Turning back to Andrew, her expression grew serious. As for you, Andrew, I'm placing you on probation. Your behavior today was completely unacceptable. You'll be participating in the training program, and I expect to see significant improvement in your approach to customer service. Andrew's face reddened, a mix of anger and humiliation evident in his expression. Probation? But I've been managing this dealership for years. You can't seriously be considering demoting me over one misunderstanding. This isn't just about one misunderstanding, Andrew, Abigail said firmly. It's about a pattern of behavior that goes against everything this dealership should stand for. We're in the business of selling dreams, not just cars. Mr. Carter reminded me of that today. As Andrew sputtered in protest, Abigail held up a hand to silence him. My decision is final. You have a choice to make, Andrew. You can see this as an opportunity to grow and improve, or you can continue down this path and find yourself looking for new employment. The tension in the room was palpable as Andrew struggled to contain his anger. Finally, he nodded stiffly. I understand, Mrs. Woodward. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't, Abigail replied. You're both dismissed. Ryan, please stay behind for a moment. I'd like to discuss the training program with you. As Andrew stormed out of the office, Ryan remained seated, still processing the unexpected turn of events. Once the door closed behind Andrew, Abigail's demeanor softened. Ryan, I want you to know that I was impressed by your handling of Mr. Carter today. You showed the kind of empathy and customer service that I want to be the hallmark of this dealership. Ryan smiled, a mix of pride and humility in his expression. Thank you, Mrs. Woodward. I just treated him the way I'd want my own grandfather to be treated. Abigail nodded approvingly. That's exactly the attitude I want to foster here. Now, let's talk about this training program. I have some ideas I'd like to share with you. As Abigail and Ryan began to discuss the details of the new initiative, neither of them could have predicted the far-reaching effects their decisions would have. The ripple effect of James Carter's visit was only just beginning, setting in motion a chain of events that would transform not just the dealership, but the lives of everyone involved. Outside the office, Andrew leaned against the wall, his mind reeling from the confrontation. His position, his reputation, everything he'd worked for was suddenly on shaky ground. As he watched Ryan and Abigail through the glass walls of the office, deep in conversation, a mix of resentment and determination settled in his chest. He straightened his tie, a hardened resolve forming in his eyes. If changes were coming to the dealership, he would make sure he came out on top, one way or another. Little did he know that his actions in the coming days would have consequences far beyond anything he could imagine. intertwining his fate with that of James Carter and his grandson in ways none of them could foresee. As the day drew to a close, the Ferrari dealership hummed with an undercurrent of change. The story of James Carter, the unassuming millionaire with a heart of gold, had begun to spread among the staff, sparking conversations and reflections on prejudice, kindness, and the true meaning of luxury. Meanwhile, across town, James Carter sat in his modest living room, the weight of the day's events settling on his shoulders. The Ferrari brochure lay on the coffee table before him, a tangible reminder of the extraordinary step he'd taken. As he contemplated how to break the news to Emma and surprise Liam, he couldn't shake the feeling that this purchase was more than just a gift for his grandson. Somehow, he sensed it was the beginning of a journey that would change not just his family's life, but the lives of many others. As night fell, the city settled into its rhythm, unaware of the transformative events set in motion by one man's act of love. The stage was set for a story of compassion, redemption, and the unexpected ways in which lives can intersect and change each other forever. The morning after James Carter's visit to the Ferrari dealership dawned bright and clear, but the atmosphere inside the showroom was anything but. The events of the previous day had sent shockwaves through the staff, and an air of uncertainty hung over the gleaming cars and polished floors. Ryan arrived early, his mind buzzing with ideas for the new training program. As he walked through the showroom, he noticed small groups of employees huddled together, their voices low as they discussed the rumors that had spread like wildfire overnight. "Did you hear about the old guy who bought a Ferrari? I heard Mrs. Woodward put Andrew on probation. They say Ryan's getting a promotion." Ryan did his best to ignore the whispers, focusing instead on the task ahead. He had spent most of the night researching customer service techniques and anti-bias training, determined to make the most of the opportunity Mrs. Woodward had given him. As he settled at his desk, Ryan's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from his mother, and the contents made his heart skip a beat. "Honey, I just got a call from the hospital. They've found a potential match for my kidney transplant. Can you come by later?" Ryan's hands shook slightly as he typed out a reply. His mother's kidney failure had been a constant worry for months, and the possibility of a transplant was a ray of hope they'd been desperately clinging to. Just as he hit send, a commotion near the entrance caught his attention. Andrew had arrived, and the change in his demeanor was striking. Gone was the arrogant swagger of yesterday. Instead, he moved with a tightly coiled energy, his eyes darting suspiciously from person to person. As Andrew approached, Ryan steeled himself for a confrontation, but to his surprise, Andrew merely nodded curtly before heading to his office, slamming the door behind him. Meanwhile, across town, James Carter was facing a dilemma of his own. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the phone in front of him. He needed to call Emma to start the process of revealing his surprise to Liam, but how could he explain the extravagant purchase without revealing the secret he'd kept for so long? With a deep breath, James picked up the phone and dialed his daughter's number. "Dad, is everything okay?" Emma's voice was tinged with concern. It wasn't like her father to call so early in the morning. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," James reassured her. "I was just wondering, how's Liam doing today?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "He had a rough night," Emma finally said, her voice tight with emotion. "The pain was pretty bad. We're thinking of taking him to the hospital later for a checkup." James felt his heart constrict. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Emma. Listen, I have an idea that might cheer him up. Could I come by later today? I have a surprise for him." "A surprise?" Emma sounded intrigued despite her worry. "What kind of surprise?" James chuckled softly. Now, if I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Just trust me on this one, okay?" After agreeing on a time for James to visit, they said their goodbyes. As James hung up the phone, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. How would Liam react to the Ferrari? And more importantly, how would Emma react when she realized the extent of her father's hidden wealth? Back at the dealership, Abigail Woodward was facing challenges of her own. She sat in her office, reviewing the latest sales figures with a frown. The economic downturn had hit the luxury car market hard, and the dealership was feeling the pinch. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Ryan entered, a folder tucked under his arm. "Mrs. Woodward, I've put together some initial ideas for the training program. I was hoping we could go over them." Abigail smiled, gesturing for him to take a seat. "Of course, Ryan. I'm eager to hear what you've come up with." As Ryan began to outline his proposals, Abigail found herself impressed by the young man's enthusiasm and insight. His ideas were fresh and innovative, focusing not just on sales techniques, but on building genuine connections with customers. "This is excellent work, Ryan," Abigail said as he finished his presentation. "I think this program could really make a difference in how we operate." Ryan beamed with pride, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, a hint of distraction or worry. Abigail leaned forward, her voice softening. "Is everything all right, Ryan? You seem a bit preoccupied." Ryan hesitated for a moment before deciding to confide in his boss. "It's my mother," he explained. "She's been waiting for a kidney transplant, and we just got news that they might have found a match. It's great news, but it's also scary." Abigail finished for him, understanding in her eyes. "Ryan, family comes first. If you need time off to be with your mother, just say the word." Gratitude washed over Ryan's face. "Thank you, Mrs. Woodward. That means a lot." As Ryan left the office, Abigail found herself reflecting on the events of the past 24 hours. James Carter's visit had set off a chain reaction, bringing to light issues and opportunities she hadn't even realized existed within her dealership. She picked up a framed photo from her desk, a picture of her late husband standing proudly in front of their first Ferrari showroom. Oh, Robert," she murmured, "I think it's time we remembered why we got into this business in the first place." With renewed determination, Abigail began to sketch out plans for a new initiative. The dealership wouldn't just sell luxury cars, it would become a force for positive change in the community. As the day progressed, the ripples of change continued to spread. In his office, Andrew seethed with resentment, plotting ways to regain his standing and undermine Ryan's new position. In the showroom, salespeople debated the merits of the upcoming changes, some excited, others skeptical. And across town, James Carter prepared to reveal a secret that would change his family's life forever. Little did any of them know that their lives were about to intersect in ways they could never have imagined. The stage was set for a story of transformation, redemption, and the extraordinary power of a single act of kindness. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the city, each player in this unfolding drama faced their own challenges and hopes. James Carter steeled himself for the revelation to come. Ryan anxiously awaited news about his mother's transplant. Abigail Woodward dreamed of a dealership that could make a real difference in people's lives. And in a hospital bed across town, young Liam Carter drifted in and out of sleep, unaware that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The wheels of fate were in motion, driven by the simple desire of a grandfather to bring joy to his grandson. The Ferrari that James Carter had purchased was more than just a car. It was a catalyst for change, a symbol of hope, and the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would touch the lives of many. As night fell over the city, the story of James Carter, the Ferrari, and the lives it would transform was just beginning to unfold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, James Carter found himself standing on the doorstep of his daughter's home. His heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. In one hand, he clutched a small gift bag containing a toy Ferrari, a prelude to the real surprise. In his other hand, he held a folder containing documents that would change everything. James took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He rang the doorbell, the sound echoing through the house. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing Emma's tired but smiling face. "Dad," she said warmly, embracing him. "Come in. Liam's been asking about you all day. As James stepped into the familiar warmth of his daughter's home, he couldn't help but notice the subtle signs of strain. Emma's smile, though genuine, was tinged with worry. The house was quieter than usual, a testament to Liam's condition. "How is he?" James asked softly as they made their way to the living room. Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "He's having a good moment right now. The pain meds are working, but—" She trailed off, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. James placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. I have a feeling things are about to change for the better." Emma looked at him curiously, but before she could ask what he meant, a weak voice called out from the living room. "Grandpa, is that you?" James's face lit up as he entered the room. There, propped up on the couch with pillows, was Liam. Despite the pallor of his skin and the thinness of his frame, the boy's eyes sparkled with life at the sight of his grandfather. "Hey, champ," James said, his voice thick with emotion. He sat down gently beside Liam, pulling him into a careful hug. "I hear you've been asking about me." Liam nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Mum said you had a surprise." "Is it true?" James chuckled, reaching for the gift bag. "Well, I might have a little something for you. But first, how about you tell me about the latest Ferrari model you've been researching?" As Liam launched into an enthusiastic, if slightly breathless, explanation of horsepower and aerodynamics, James marveled at his grandson's resilience. Even in the face of such adversity, Liam's passion for life and for his beloved cars remained undiminished. When Liam paused to catch his breath, James seized the moment. "You know, Liam, your knowledge of these cars is incredible. I think you might be ready for this." With a flourish, James presented the gift bag. Liam's eyes widened as he reached inside, pulling out a meticulously detailed model of a Ferrari, the same model James had purchased at the dealership. "Wow, Grandpa, this is amazing," Liam exclaimed, his fingers tracing the contours of the toy car. "It's just like the one we saw on TV the other day." James smiled, his eyes meeting Emma's over Liam's head. She looked touched by the gift, but there was confusion in her gaze. She knew her father's modest means, or at least what she thought she knew. "Liam, Emma," James began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "There's something I need to tell you both. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Emma sat down, her brow furrowed with concern. "Dad, what is it?" James took a deep breath, reaching for the folder he had brought. "Many years ago, before you were born, Emma, I won the lottery. A substantial amount." The room fell silent. Emma's jaw dropped, while Liam looked between his mother and grandfather with wide eyes. But we've always lived so modestly," Emma stammered. "All these years, you never said anything." James nodded, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I made a choice back then. I didn't want the money to change who I was or how people saw me. I invested most of it, lived simply, and tried to help others quietly." He opened the folder, revealing bank statements and investment portfolios. Emma's eyes widened as she saw the figures. "Dad, this is millions," she whispered, her voice trembling. James reached out, taking her hand. "I know this is a shock, sweetheart. I'm sorry for keeping it from you for so long. But now, with Liam's condition, I realized it was time to use this blessing to make a real difference." He turned to Liam, who had been listening intently, his young mind trying to grasp the magnitude of what was being revealed. "Liam," James said, his voice soft but filled with emotion, "that model car isn't just a toy. It's a promise. Because yesterday I went to a Ferrari dealership and bought you the real thing." The room erupted in a cacophony of reactions. Liam's face lit up with a joy so pure it brought tears to James's eyes. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. "A real Ferrari? For me?" Liam's voice was filled with wonder and disbelief. James nodded, smiling through the tears that had begun to form. "Yes, champ, and not just that. I want to use this money to make sure you get the best medical care possible, to fund research into MS." to make sure you and your mum never have to worry about anything ever again. Emma, overwhelmed, pulled her father into a tight embrace. "Oh, Dad," she sobbed, years of stress and worry finally finding release. "I don't know what to say." As the family clung to each other, awash in a sea of emotions, none of them could have known the far-reaching consequences of this revelation. In that moment, their world had shifted on its axis, opening up new possibilities and hope for the future. But beyond the walls of their home, the ripples of James's decision continued to spread. At the Ferrari dealership, Ryan received news that would change his life forever. Abigail Woodward put the finishing touches on a plan that would transform her business. And in his darkened office, Andrew nursed his wounded pride, unaware that his actions in the coming days would set in motion events that would intersect with the Carter family in ways none of them could have predicted. As the night deepened, the city slept, unaware of the extraordinary stories unfolding within its bounds. The tale of James Carter, his grandson, and a Ferrari was just beginning, a story of love, hope, and the unexpected ways in which lives can be transformed by a single act of kindness. The following morning broke with a sense of renewed hope and possibility. As the sun's first rays painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, lives began to intertwine in ways that would soon become apparent. At the Ferrari dealership, Ryan arrived early, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of his mother's impending kidney transplant. The possibility of a match had filled him with equal parts hope and anxiety. As he unlocked the showroom doors, his phone buzzed with a message from the hospital. His heart raced as he read the contents. "Good news, Mr. Johnson. The donor kidney is a match. We'd like to schedule the transplant for next week. Please call us to discuss details." Ryan's hands trembled as he dialed the hospital's number, his voice barely above a whisper as he confirmed the details with the transplant coordinator. As he hung up, a wave of relief washed over him, followed quickly by a new worry. How would he manage work and his mother's care? Meanwhile, across town, the Carter household was abuzz with activity. The revelations of the previous night had sparked a whirlwind of emotions and plans. Emma sat at the kitchen table, poring over medical journals and treatment options that had previously been financially out of reach. James busied himself making breakfast, his mind already formulating ways to use his long-hidden wealth to better his family's life and the lives of others. Liam, despite a night of fitful sleep due to his excitement, was more animated than he had been in weeks. From his bed, he chatted endlessly about Ferraris, his eyes shining with a light that had been dimmed by months of pain and uncertainty. "Grandpa," Liam called out as James entered with a tray of food. "When can we see the car? Can we go today?" James chuckled, setting down the tray. "Easy there, champ. We need to make sure you're feeling up to it first. How about we talk to your doctors and see what they say?" As the Carter family began to navigate their new reality, back at the dealership, Abigail Woodward was putting the final touches on her plan to transform the business. Inspired by James Carter's story and her own desire to make a difference, she'd spent the night outlining a new initiative. "Community Wheels," she murmured, looking at the proposal before her. The idea was bold. For every high-end vehicle sold, the dealership would donate a reliable used car to a family in need. Additionally, they would partner with local charities to provide automotive job training for underprivileged youth. As she prepared to present her idea to the staff, Abigail couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. This was more than just selling luxury cars. This was about changing lives. The morning staff meeting was set to begin, and employees filed into the conference room, an air of anticipation hanging over them. Ryan, still reeling from the news about his mother, took a seat near the front, his mind racing with thoughts of the training program he was meant to implement. Andrew slipped in just as the meeting was about to start, his face a mask of forced neutrality. But beneath the surface, resentment simmered. He had spent a sleepless night plotting ways to undermine Ryan and regain his standing in the company. As Abigail began to outline her vision for Community Wheels, the room erupted in a mix of reactions. Some employees were immediately enthusiastic, while others expressed skepticism about how it would affect their commissions. Ryan, despite his personal preoccupations, found himself drawn in by the idea. He raised his hand, suggesting ways to integrate the initiative into the new customer service training program. Abigail beamed at him, grateful for the support. Andrew, however, saw an opportunity. Under the guise of playing devil's advocate, he began to raise pointed questions about the financial viability of the program. With all due respect, Mrs. Woodward, he said, his voice dripping with false concern, how can we justify giving away cars when our own sales are down? The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Abigail. She met Andrew's gaze steadily, a small smile playing on her lips. That's an excellent question, Andrew. In fact, it brings me to the next part of our meeting. I'm pleased to announce that we've just secured a significant sale, a top-of-the-line Ferrari, purchased by a very special customer. Murmurs of surprise and excitement rippled through the room. Abigail continued, this sale not only boosts our numbers, but also exemplifies the kind of impact we can have. The customer, Mr. James Carter, bought the car as a gift for his grandson who is battling a serious illness. His story inspired me to think about how we can use our position to make a real difference in people's lives. As Abigail shared a sanitized version of James's story, emphasizing his humility and generosity, the mood in the room shifted. Even the most skeptical employees found themselves moved by the tale of a grandfather's love and the transformative power of kindness. Ryan, listening intently, felt a connection to the story. He thought of his own mother, of the struggles they had faced, and how a single act of generosity, the donated kidney, was about to change their lives. In that moment, he realized that he wanted to be part of something bigger, something that could make a real difference in the world. As the meeting concluded, the dealership was abuzz with excitement. Employees broke into small groups, discussing the new initiative and sharing ideas. Ryan found himself surrounded by colleagues eager to hear more about the training program and how it would tie into Community Wheels. Andrew, however, slipped away unnoticed, his mind working overtime. The story of James Carter had given him an idea, a way to potentially save his career and get back at those he felt had wronged him. With a furtive glance around, he pulled out his phone and began to make a call. As the day progressed, the lives of those touched by James Carter's decision continued to intertwine in unexpected ways. At the hospital, Emma and Liam met with specialists, exploring treatment options that had previously been out of reach. James began the process of setting up a foundation to fund MS research, his heart full of purpose, and across the city, in offices and homes and hospital rooms, the ripples of change continued to spread. Ryan, balancing his excitement for the new initiative with concern for his mother's upcoming surgery, Abigail, feeling a renewed sense of purpose in her work, and Andrew, setting in motion a plan that would have unforeseen consequences for all involved. As evening fell, the stage was set for the next act in this unfolding drama. The Ferrari, more than just a car, had become a symbol of hope, a catalyst for change, and the thread that would bind together the fates of strangers in ways none of them could have anticipated. The city settled into the quiet of night, unaware of the extraordinary stories unfolding within its bounds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new hopes, and the next chapter in a tale that was quickly becoming legend. The following day dawned with a palpable sense of anticipation. At the Carter household, Liam woke early, his excitement overshadowing the constant pain he'd grown accustomed to. Today was the day he would finally see his Ferrari, a dream he'd never dared to imagine coming true. James arrived just after breakfast, his weathered face alight with the joy of a man about to fulfill his grandson's greatest wish. Emma watched from the doorway, her eyes misty with a mixture of gratitude and lingering disbelief at their newfound circumstances. "Ready for your surprise, champ?" James asked, his voice gentle but filled with excitement. Liam nodded eagerly, already seated in his wheelchair. "More than ready, Grandpa. I couldn't sleep all night thinking about it." As they prepared to leave, Emma pulled her father aside. "And Dad," she began, her voice low, "I still can't believe all of this. Are you sure about using so much money? We could just focus on Liam's treatment." James placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, I've spent years saving this money, always wondering when the right time to use it would come. This is it. Liam deserves every bit of joy we can give him, and we're going to use every resource we have to fight this illness." Emma nodded, blinking back tears as she hugged her father tightly. Meanwhile, at the Ferrari dealership, a different kind of anticipation filled the air. Abigail Woodward had called an early morning meeting to finalize the details of the Community Wheels initiative. The showroom buzzed with a mix of excitement and nervous energy as employees gathered. Ryan stood near the front, his mind split between the upcoming presentation and thoughts of his mother's impending surgery. He'd spent the night creating a detailed plan for integrating the new initiative into the customer service training program. As Abigail began to speak, outlining the specifics of how Community Wheels would work, Ryan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was more than just a job now. It was a chance to be part of something truly meaningful. However, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. From the back of the room, Andrew watched with narrowed eyes. His plan was already in motion, a scheme born of resentment and desperation. He'd made a call the previous evening to an old contact in the local media, a sensationalist reporter always on the lookout for a juicy story. As the meeting progressed, Andrew's phone buzzed quietly in his pocket. A text message appeared. "Story sounds interesting. Need more details. Can you get photos of the Ferrari buyer and his family? Especially the sick kid. That'll sell." Andrew's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. He quickly typed back a response. "I'll see what I can do. Meeting them later today for the car delivery. We'll keep you posted." Little did Andrew know that his actions were about to set in motion a chain of events that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. As the morning wore on, the Carter family made their way to the dealership. James had arranged for a private viewing, wanting to ensure Liam's comfort and privacy. As they pulled into the parking lot, Liam's eyes widened at the sight of the sleek building. "This is it, Grandpa. This is where my Ferrari is," he asked, his voice filled with awe. James chuckled, helping Emma get Liam's wheelchair out of the car. "That's right, champ. Are you ready to see your dream come true?" As they entered the showroom, they were greeted by Abigail and Ryan. Abigail's warm smile faltered slightly as she took in Liam's frail appearance, but she quickly recovered, her voice filled with genuine warmth. "Welcome, Mr. Carter, and you must be Liam. We've been so excited to meet you." Ryan stepped forward, kneeling down to Liam's eye level. "Hey there, Liam. I hear you're quite the car expert. Think you can teach me a thing or two about Ferraris?" Liam's face lit up, and he immediately launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his favorite models. As Ryan listened attentively, Abigail drew James and Emma aside. "We've prepared a special area for the unveiling," she explained in a low voice. "No, we want to make this as comfortable and memorable for Liam as possible." As they made their way to a curtained-off section of the showroom, none of them noticed Andrew lurking in the background, his phone at the ready to capture every moment. The air was thick with anticipation as they gathered around the veiled car. Abigail looked to James, who nodded, and then she turned to Liam. "Liam, would you like to do the honors?" With trembling hands, Liam reached out and grasped the edge of the silky cover. As he pulled, the fabric slid away, revealing the gleaming red Ferrari beneath. The room fell silent for a moment, and then Liam's voice, filled with wonder and joy, broke the spell. It's perfect," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Grandpa, it's even better than I imagined." As Liam explored every inch of the car from his wheelchair, touching the smooth paint and peering into the luxurious interior, There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even Ryan, who had seen countless customers react to their new cars, found himself moved by the pure, unadulterated happiness on Liam's face. James knelt beside his grandson, his own eyes glistening. "What do you think, champ? Was it worth the wait?" Liam turned to his grandfather, his face radiant with joy. "It's the best thing ever, Grandpa. I can't believe it's really mine." As the family shared this intimate moment, Andrew silently snapped photos, his mind already crafting the sensational headlines that would accompany them. But as he watched the scene unfold, a small seed of doubt began to take root in his heart. The love and joy he was witnessing was palpable, and for a brief moment he questioned the path he had chosen. But it was too late. The wheels were already in motion, and the story he had set out to exploit was about to take on a life of its own. As the Carter family reveled in their moment of happiness, none of them could have known that their private joy was about to become very public, with consequences that would reach far beyond the walls of the Ferrari dealership. The day of dreams coming true was also the day that would test the strength of their family, the integrity of the dealership, and the power of compassion in the face of adversity. The true journey was only just beginning. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the Ferrari dealership, the joyous atmosphere surrounding Liam and his new car began to shift. The first hints of the approaching storm were subtle, barely noticeable to those caught up in the moment. James Carter stood back, watching his grandson's face light up as Ryan patiently explained every feature of the Ferrari. Emma, her arm linked with her father's, wiped away tears of happiness and relief. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed as though all their worries had melted away in the face of Liam's pure joy. Abigail Woodward observed the scene with a mixture of professional satisfaction and genuine emotion. This, she thought, was what selling dreams was truly about. Not just the exchange of money for a luxury item, but the creation of moments that would be cherished for a lifetime. However, as she turned to share a smile with her staff, she noticed Andrew hovering near the back of the showroom, his phone held suspiciously close to his chest. A flicker of unease passed through her, but before she could act on it, her attention was drawn back to Liam. "Mrs. Woodward," the boy called out, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "Could we maybe start the engine, just to hear it?" Abigail's face softened. "Of course, Liam. Ryan, would you do the honors?" As Ryan leaned into the car to turn the key, a low, powerful rumble filled the showroom. Liam's eyes widened in delight, and for a moment, everyone was transported by the pure, visceral thrill of the machine. It was in this moment of distraction that Andrew made his move. Slipping away from the group, he quickly sent off the photos he'd taken, along with a hastily typed message. "Got the pics? Rich old guy bought Ferrari for sick grandson. Heartwarming story on surface, but dig deeper. Why was wealth hidden? Potential scandal. Family in shock. Exclusive coming your way." As he hit send, Andrew felt a mix of triumph and unease. He justified his actions to himself. This was business after all. He was just doing what he needed to secure his position. But deep down, a voice nagged at him, questioning the morality of exploiting a family's private moment for personal gain. Meanwhile, oblivious to the brewing storm, the Carter family continued to revel in their moment of joy. James knelt beside Liam's wheelchair, pointing out details on the car and sharing in his grandson's excitement. "You know, Liam," James said softly, "this car is more than just a machine. It's a symbol of hope, of the fight we're going to put up against your illness. Every time you look at it, I want you to remember that anything is possible." Liam nodded, his eyes shining with a mixture of tears and determination. "I will, Grandpa. And when I get better, we'll go for a real drive together, okay?" James swallowed hard, fighting back his own tears. "It's a promise, champ." As the family shared this tender moment, Ryan found himself deeply moved. The parallels to his own situation, his mother's upcoming transplant, the hope for a better future, weren't lost on him. He made a silent vow to do everything in his power to make the Community Wheels program a success, to spread this kind of joy to others who needed it. Abigail, sensing that the family might need a moment of privacy, began to usher the other staff members away. As she did, her eyes met Andrew's, and she felt that flicker of unease again. There was something in his expression, a mixture of guilt and defiance, that set off warning bells in her mind. "Andrew," she called out, "a word in my office, please." As Andrew followed Abigail to her office, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The reporter had received the photos and was eager for more information. Andrew's palms began to sweat as he realized he was walking a dangerous line between career advancement and potential disaster. In the showroom, the Carter family's moment of pure joy was drawing to a close. As much as Liam wanted to stay with his Ferrari forever, his body was beginning to show signs of fatigue. Emma, ever attentive to her son's needs, noticed the pallor creeping back into his cheeks. "I think it might be time to head home, sweetheart," she said gently. "We can come back another day when you're feeling stronger." Liam nodded reluctantly, his eyes never leaving the gleaming red car. "Promise we'll come back soon." "Of course," James assured him. "This is your car, Liam. We'll visit as often as you like." As Ryan helped the family prepare to leave, providing them with all the necessary paperwork and contact information, a commotion from the direction of Abigail's office caught everyone's attention. "What were you thinking?" Abigail's voice, usually so composed, was raised in anger. "This is a complete breach of client confidentiality." The door to her office flew open, and Andrew stormed out, his face a mask of defiance and fear. He brushed past the startled Carter family without a word, heading straight for the exit. Abigail emerged from her office, her face flushed with anger, but quickly composing herself as she saw the concerned looks on the faces of the Carters and Ryan. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance," she said, forcing a smile. Please, don't let this detract from your special day." But the damage was done. The bubble of joy that had surrounded the family had been punctured, allowing the realities of the outside world to seep back in. Emma held Liam a little closer, a protective instinct kicking in. James, his years of living cautiously coming to the fore, turned to Abigail with a questioning look. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Woodward? Is there something we should be concerned about?" Abigail hesitated, torn between her professional duty to maintain calm and her moral obligation to be honest with the family that had placed their trust in her. As she opened her mouth to respond, her phone began to ring insistently. The storm that had been gathering was about to break, and none of them were truly prepared for the deluge that was to come. The Ferrari, once a symbol of pure joy and hope, was about to become the center of a maelstrom that would test the bonds of family, the ethics of business, and the power of compassion in the face of public scrutiny. As they stood there, frozen in a moment of uncertainty, the world outside the dealership continued to turn. News travels fast in the age of social media, and the story of the humble millionaire, his sick grandson, and the Ferrari was already beginning to spread like wildfire. The next few hours would prove crucial, not just for the Carter family, but for everyone whose lives had become intertwined in this unexpected drama. The true test of character for James, Emma, Liam, Abigail, Ryan, and even Andrew was about to begin. How they would weather this storm would define not just their individual futures, but the very nature of kindness, integrity, and redemption in a world quick to judge and slow to forgive. The next morning broke with an unsettling calm, the proverbial quiet before the storm. James Carter awoke early, a habit ingrained from years of modest living. As he shuffled to his kitchen to make his usual cup of coffee, he had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. The first indication that something was amiss came in the form of a phone call. James's old flip phone buzzed insistently on the kitchen counter. Frowning at the unfamiliar number, he answered, "Mr. Carter, this is Sarah Jenkins from the Daily Chronicle. We're running a story on your recent Ferrari purchase and would love to get a comment from you about your hidden wealth and your grandson's condition." James felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. I'm sorry, what? How did you get this information?" But Sarah was already pressing on, her voice eager and relentless. "Our sources indicate that you've been living modestly despite winning the lottery years ago. Can you comment on why you chose to keep your wealth a secret, and why come forward now with such an extravagant purchase?" James's mind raced. How had this information gotten out? Who could have possibly known? His thoughts immediately went to the dealership, to the commotion he'd witnessed just before leaving. With a sinking feeling, he realized that their private moment had somehow become public knowledge. "I have no comment at this time," he said firmly, ending the call despite the reporter's protests. No sooner had he hung up than his phone began to buzz again, and again, and again. James stared at the device in horror as it lit up with call after call from unknown numbers. Across town, Emma was experiencing a similar morning of chaos. She had just gotten Liam settled for breakfast when there was a knock at the door. Opening it, she found herself face to face with a crowd of reporters, cameras flashing in her face. "Miss Carter, can you tell us about your father's secret fortune? How is your son coping with his illness? What are your plans for the Ferrari?" Emma slammed the door shut, her heart pounding. She rushed to close all the curtains as more questions were shouted through the door. Liam, hearing the commotion, called out weakly from the kitchen. "Mum, what's going on?" Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just some people asking questions. Let's finish your breakfast, okay?" As she helped Liam eat, her mind whirled with worry. How had this happened? And more importantly, how would this affect Liam? The last thing he needed was this kind of stress and intrusion. Meanwhile, at the Ferrari dealership, Abigail Woodward arrived to find a media circus in full swing. Reporters and camera crews swarmed the entrance, all clamoring for a statement about the mysterious millionaire and his ailing grandson. Abigail pushed her way through, refusing to comment, her face a mask of professional calm. But inside, she was seething. She had a pretty good idea of how this information had leaked, and she was determined to get to the bottom of it. As she entered her office, she found Ryan already there, his face pale with worry. "Mrs. Woodward, have you seen the news? It's everywhere. Social media, local stations, even some national outlets are picking up the story." Abigail nodded grimly. "I've seen it. Ryan, I need you to gather all the staff immediately. We need to control this situation before it spirals even further out of hand." As Ryan hurried to comply, Abigail's phone rang. It was James Carter. "Mrs. Woodward," his voice was strained but controlled, "I think we need to talk about what's happening. Mr. Carter, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am about this breach of your privacy. I assure you, we're doing everything in our power to manage the situation and find out how this information was leaked." There was a pause on the other end of the line. When James spoke again, his voice was heavy with concern. "It's not just about me, Mrs. Woodward, my daughter and grandson. They're being hounded by reporters. Liam doesn't need this kind of stress. We need to find a way to protect them." Abigail's heart sank. In all the chaos, she hadn't even considered how this media frenzy might affect Liam's health. "Of course, Mr. Carter, I understand completely. I have some ideas on how we might be able to handle this. Can you and your family come to the dealership? We can provide a secure, private space to discuss our options and formulate a plan." As they agreed on a time, Abigail's mind was already racing with potential solutions. She would need to call in favors, possibly hire a crisis management team. But first, she had to deal with the source of the leak. In a small apartment across town, Andrew sat hunched over his laptop, watching as the story he had set in motion took on a life of its own. His initial feeling of triumph had long since faded, replaced by a gnawing sense of guilt and fear. He had never meant for it to go this far. The story was supposed to be a small, local interest piece, something to boost his standing at the dealership, maybe even leverage a better position. But now it had become a feeding frenzy, with the Carter family at its center. As he scrolled through social media, seeing the speculation, the invasive questions, the paparazzi-style photos of Emma and Liam, Andrew felt physically ill. He had done this. In his resentment and ambition, he had exposed a family, a sick child, to this circus. His phone buzzed with a message from the reporter he had contacted. "Great tip. Stories blowing up. Need more insider info. Anything on the kids' medical details? Family's financial history?" Andrew stared at the message, his finger hovering over the reply button. This was his chance to further ingratiate himself with the media, to possibly parlay this into a new career. But the cost was too high. With a sudden, decisive movement, he deleted the message. Then, taking a deep breath, he dialed Abigail's number. It was time to come clean, to face the consequences of his actions. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to make this right. As the morning wore on, the story continued to spread. Social media was ablaze with hashtags, secret millionaire, Ferrari dream, Liam's wish. People around the world were sharing the story, some praising James's generosity, others questioning his motives, and still others using it as a springboard to discuss wealth inequality and healthcare issues. In the eye of this storm, the Carter family huddled together, trying to shield Liam from the worst of it. James and Emma exchanged worried glances over Liam's head as he rested, exhausted by the morning's excitement. They knew they would have to face this situation head-on, but how? How could they protect Liam's privacy while addressing the public's curiosity? How could they turn this media circus into something positive? As they prepared to leave for the dealership, James looked at his grandson, peacefully unaware of the chaos swirling around him. In that moment, he made a silent vow. They would weather this storm, and somehow, they would find a way to use this unexpected spotlight to do some good. Little did they know that across the city, others were making similar vows. Ryan, determined to use this opportunity to highlight the importance of the Community Wheels initiative. Abigail, resolved to turn this crisis into a chance for positive change in how the dealership operated. And Andrew, finally facing the consequences of his actions, was about to take the first steps on a journey of redemption that would surprise everyone, including himself. As the Carter family's car pulled out of their driveway, navigating through the sea of reporters, the next chapter of their extraordinary story was about to unfold. The true test of their character and the power of compassion in the face of adversity was just beginning. As the Carter family's car wound its way through the city streets, carefully avoiding the most congested areas where reporters might be lying in wait, the atmosphere inside was tense. James sat in the driver's seat, his weathered hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his eyes constantly darting to the rearview mirror to check on Liam. In the back seat, Emma cradled Liam protectively, shielding him from the occasional flash of a camera when they stopped at traffic lights. Liam, sensing the tension but not fully understanding its source, remained unusually quiet, his fingers absently tracing the contours of the toy Ferrari he insisted on bringing. "Grandpa," Liam's small voice broke the silence, "are people mad at us because of the car?" James felt his heart constrict. He exchanged a quick glance with Emma before answering, "No, champ. People are just, very interested in our story. Sometimes grown-ups get too excited about things that aren't their business." Emma squeezed Liam's hand reassuringly. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're going to sort everything out." As they approached the Ferrari dealership, they could see a crowd of reporters and onlookers gathered outside. James's jaw tightened, but he was relieved to see several security guards maintaining a perimeter around the entrance. Abigail Woodward stood just inside the doors, her face a mask of professional calm. As soon as she spotted the Carter's car, she signaled to the security team. In a well-coordinated move, the guards created a human barrier, allowing the family to drive into a private garage entrance that had been cleared for their arrival. Once inside, Abigail rushed to greet them, her composure slipping to reveal genuine concern. "Mr. Carter, Emma, Liam, I cannot express how sorry I am for this situation. Please come with me. We have a private room prepared where we can talk without any disturbances." As they made their way through the back corridors of the dealership, James noticed the looks of sympathy and curiosity from the staff they passed. He was grateful for the discretion they showed, no one attempting to approach or question them. The private room turned out to be a plush conference area, comfortably furnished with soft leather chairs and a large, polished table. Ryan was already there, setting up refreshments and what looked like a series of presentation boards. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," Abigail said, gesturing to the chairs. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" As they settled in, there was a knock at the door. Abigail's face tightened almost imperceptibly before she called out, "Come in." The door opened to reveal Andrew, looking pale and disheveled. The room fell silent as he entered, the tension palpable. I needed to be here for this," Andrew said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I owe you all an explanation and an apology." James straightened in his chair, realization dawning on his face. "It was you," he said, his voice low and controlled. "You leaked the information to the press." Andrew nodded, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "Yes, I made a terrible mistake. I was angry, feeling undervalued, and I thought this story could somehow benefit me. I never imagined it would spiral out of control like this." Emma's face flushed with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The stress this is putting on Liam, on all of us?" Andrew flinched at her words, but stood his ground. "I know, and I'm here to face the consequences of my actions. I've already contacted the reporter I leaked the information to. Told them I was retracting everything. It won't stop the story completely, but it might help slow it down." Abigail, who had been watching this exchange with a mixture of disappointment and grudging respect for Andrew's decision to come clean, finally spoke up. "Andrew's actions were inexcusable, and rest assured, there will be severe consequences. But right now, our priority needs to be managing this situation and protecting your family's privacy." She turned to Ryan, nodding for him to begin his presentation. Ryan cleared his throat nervously before starting. "We've put together a comprehensive plan to address this situation," he began, flipping over the first board to reveal a detailed flowchart. "First and foremost, we need to control the narrative. Instead of hiding from the press, we propose a limited, controlled release of information." As Ryan outlined the plan, which included a carefully crafted press release, a single interview with a respected journalist, and a social media strategy to highlight the positive aspects of the story, James found himself impressed by the young man's thoroughness. "The key," Ryan continued, "is to shift the focus from the sensational aspects, the hidden wealth, the luxury car, to the real heart of the story. A grandfather's love for his grandson and a community coming together to support a family in need." He flipped to another board, revealing the logo for the Community Wheels initiative. "We believe we can use this attention to launch our new program, showing how luxury and community service can go hand in hand. Mr. Carter, with your permission, we'd like to make your family the face of this initiative." James leaned back in his chair, considering. He looked at Emma, seeing the worry in her eyes, but also a glimmer of hope. Then he turned to Liam, who had been listening with rapt attention, his toy Ferrari clutched tightly in his hands. "What do you think, champ?" James asked softly. "Oh, do you think we could use this attention to help other kids like you?" Liam's face lit up with a smile that melted everyone's hearts. "Could we really help other kids, Grandpa? Kids who are sick like me?" James nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. "We really could, Liam. What do you say? Should we try to turn this into something good?" Liam nodded enthusiastically, and in that moment, The tension in the room seemed to dissipate. Even Emma's anger towards Andrew softened slightly at the sight of her son's renewed enthusiasm. Abigail, sensing the shift in mood, stepped forward. "Mr. Carter, Emma, Liam, I know this isn't what you signed up for when you came to buy a car, but I promise you, if you're willing to work with us, we'll do everything in our power to protect your privacy and turn this into a positive experience." James stood up, extending his hand to Abigail. "Mrs. Woodward, you've already shown us more kindness and consideration than we could have expected. If you believe this is the best way forward, then we're willing to trust your judgment." As they shook hands, there was a sense of a new chapter beginning. The storm wasn't over, far from it, but now they had a plan, a way to weather it together. Andrew, who had been standing silently by the door, finally spoke up again. "I know I have no right to ask this, but is there anything I can do to help make this right?" James turned to him, his expression stern but not unkind. "Young man, you've caused a lot of trouble for my family, but I believe in second chances. If you're truly sorry, then the best thing you can do is work with Mrs. Woodward and her team to fix this mess you've created." Andrew nodded eagerly, relief washing over his face. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." As the group began to dive into the details of their plan, there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but together they stood a chance of not just weathering this storm, but of creating something truly meaningful from it. Outside, the media frenzy continued, unaware that behind closed doors, a small group of people were about to change the narrative in ways they could never have anticipated. The story of James Carter, his grandson Liam, and a Ferrari was about to evolve into something much bigger, a tale of redemption, community, and the enduring power of love in the face of adversity. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Carter family, along with the team at the Ferrari dealership, worked tirelessly to implement their plan. The controlled release of information began with a carefully crafted press statement, followed by a single, in-depth interview with a respected journalist known for her integrity and compassion. James, Emma, and Liam sat together in the dealership's now familiar private room, facing the journalist, Sarah Brennan. Sarah's warm demeanor and thoughtful questions helped put them at ease as they shared their story. "Mr. Carter," Sarah began, her voice gentle, "can you tell us about the moment you decided to buy the Ferrari for Liam?" James smiled, his eyes misting slightly as he recalled that pivotal decision. "It wasn't just about buying a car," he explained. "It was about giving Liam hope, a reason to keep fighting. When you see your grandson battling such a terrible illness with so much courage, you'd move heaven and earth to bring a smile to his face." As James spoke, Emma held Liam's hand, offering silent support. Liam, despite his fatigue, sat up straighter, pride shining in his eyes as he listened to his grandfather. The interview continued, touching on James's lottery win and his decision to live modestly, the challenges of Liam's illness, and finally, the unexpected media attention. "Emma," Sarah asked, turning to Liam's mother, "how has this sudden publicity affected your family?" Emma took a deep breath before answering. "It's been overwhelming, to be honest. We've always been a private family, and to have our lives suddenly thrust into the spotlight was jarring. But Jane," she added, a small smile forming, "it's also shown us how much kindness there is in the world. The support we've received from the community has been incredible." As the interview progressed, they began to discuss the Community Wheels initiative. Liam, who had been quiet for most of the interview, suddenly perked up. "Can I say something?" he asked, his voice small but determined. Sarah smiled warmly. "Of course, Liam, we'd love to hear from you." Liam looked at his mother and grandfather, who nodded encouragingly. "I know I'm really lucky to have this amazing car," he began, his words careful and measured. "But there are lots of kids out there who are sick like me, or whose families are struggling. If we can use my story to help them, then maybe all this craziness will be worth it. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Liam finished speaking. Sarah, visibly moved, thanked Liam for his insight. As the interview concluded, there was a sense that they had managed to shift the narrative. No longer was this just a story about a secret millionaire and a luxury car. It had become a tale of family, hope, and community. Meanwhile, at the dealership, Abigail and her team were working around the clock to launch the Community Wheels initiative. Ryan had thrown himself into the project with renewed vigor, coordinating with local charities and organizing a team of volunteers. Andrew, true to his word, had been working tirelessly to make amends. He used his contacts in the media to help control the flow of information and even reached out to other luxury car dealerships to get them on board with the initiative. The day of the official launch arrived, and the Ferrari dealership had been transformed. Gone was the exclusive, intimidating atmosphere. Instead, the showroom buzzed with a warm, community-oriented energy. Local families in need, selected by partnering charities, were invited to the event. They would be the first recipients of reliable used cars, donated and refurbished as part of the Community Wheels program. As James, Emma, and Liam arrived, they were greeted not by a swarm of invasive reporters, but by a crowd of well-wishers and supporters. Liam's eyes widened as he saw a group of children, some in wheelchairs like him, others showing signs of various illnesses or disabilities. "Grandpa," he whispered, tugging on James's sleeve, "can I go talk to them?" James looked at Emma, who nodded with a mixture of pride and emotion. "Of course, champ. Go make some new friends." As Liam wheeled himself over to the group, introducing himself and immediately launching into excited chatter about cars, James and Emma watched with hearts full of love and hope. Abigail approached them, a broad smile on her face. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I can't thank you enough for your support in this. You've turned what could have been a PR nightmare into something truly beautiful." James shook his head modestly. "And we just followed your lead, Mrs. Woodward. You and your team have done an incredible job." As they spoke, Ryan hurried over, excitement evident in his voice. "Mrs. Woodward, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you won't believe this. We've just received calls from 3 other luxury car dealerships in the state. They want to know how they can implement similar programs in their communities." The news was met with joy and a sense of accomplishment. What had started as one act of love, a grandfather buying a Ferrari for his sick grandson, was blossoming into a movement that could impact thousands of lives. As the event progressed, there were tears of joy as families received keys to their new cars, promises of job training, and support from a community that had come together in an extraordinary way. Liam, surrounded by his new friends, was beaming with happiness. For the first time in months, the pain and worry of his illness seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the joy of connection and the excitement of making a difference. James stood back, watching the scene unfold. He felt a presence beside him and turned to see Andrew, looking nervous but determined. "Mr. Carter," Andrew began, his voice low, "I know I can never fully make up for what I did, but I want you to know that I'm committed to this program. I'll do whatever it takes to ensure it succeeds and helps as many people as possible." James studied the young man for a moment before responding, "You know, Andrew, in my experience, it's not about never making mistakes. It's about how we choose to rectify them. You're on the right path. Keep going." As the day drew to a close, the Carter family found themselves at the center of a very different kind of attention. No longer were they hounded by sensation-seeking reporters. Instead, they were surrounded by people whose lives they had touched, directly and indirectly. Emma, watching Liam laugh with his new friends, leaned into her father. "Dad," she said softly, "when you bought that Ferrari, did you ever imagine it would lead to all this?" James chuckled, wrapping an arm around his daughter. "Not in my wildest dreams, sweetheart. But you know what? This, right here, right now, this is the real dream come true. As the sun set on the Ferrari dealership, casting a warm glow over the gathered community, there was a sense of a new chapter beginning. The story of James Carter, Liam, and the Ferrari had evolved into something much larger than any of them could have anticipated. It had become a testament to the power of love, the strength of community, and the incredible changes that can occur when people come together with open hearts and a shared purpose. The journey wasn't over. Liam still faced challenges with his health, and maintaining the momentum of community wheels would require ongoing effort. But as the Carter family drove home that evening, Liam clutching a photo of himself with his new friends in front of his Ferrari, they knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, supported by a community that had become like family. The Ferrari, once just a dream, had become a symbol of hope, not just for Liam, but for countless others. And in that transformation lay the true magic of their extraordinary story. In the weeks following the launch of the Community Wheels initiative, the ripple effects of the Carter family's story continued to spread far beyond the boundaries of their city. What had begun as a personal act of love between a grandfather and his grandson had blossomed into a movement that was touching lives across the country. James Carter sat in his modest living room, sipping his morning coffee as he perused the latest update from Abigail Woodward. The report detailed the expansion of Community Wheels to 5 more states, with luxury car dealerships partnering with local charities to provide reliable transportation to families in need. James couldn't help but smile at the thought of how far this had come. His reflections were interrupted by the sound of laughter from the backyard. Setting down his coffee, James moved to the window, his heart swelling at the sight that greeted him. Liam, seated in his wheelchair but looking stronger than he had in months, was surrounded by a small group of children. Some were clearly dealing with their own health challenges, but all wore expressions of joy as they played together. The backyard had been transformed in recent weeks. A smooth, wheelchair-accessible path wound through a garden of vibrant flowers. At its center stood a miniature version of Liam's Ferrari, custom-built to be operated safely by children with various disabilities. It had become a symbol of hope and a source of joy for Liam and his new friends. Emma appeared at James's side, her eyes misty as she watched her son. "I never thought I'd see him like this again," she said softly. "So full of life, so happy." James put an arm around his daughter's shoulders. It's amazing what can happen when people come together, isn't it?" Their moment was interrupted by the ringing of the doorbell. Emma went to answer it, returning moments later with Ryan in tow. The young man from the dealership had become a frequent visitor to the Carter home. His enthusiasm for the Community Wheels program matched only by his genuine affection for Liam. "Mr. Carter, Emma," Ryan greeted them warmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I have some news I thought you'd want to hear right away." James gestured for Ryan to take a seat. "Not at all, Ryan. What's on your mind?" Ryan's face broke into a wide grin. "We've just heard from a major auto manufacturer. They want to partner with Community Wheels on a national level. They're offering to provide discounted vehicles and maintenance support for the program across the country." The news was met with stunned silence, followed by exclamations of joy. Emma hugged Ryan impulsively, while James sat back, shaking his head in amazement. "I can hardly believe it," James said. "When I bought that Ferrari for Liam, I never imagined." Ryan nodded, understanding. "It's incredible, isn't it? But that's not all. The publicity from the program has led to increased funding for MS research. There's a new clinical trial starting next month, and Liam's doctor thinks he might be a good candidate." At this, Emma's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. The possibility of new treatment options for Liam was more than they had dared to hope for. As they discussed the details, the back door burst open, and Liam wheeled in, followed by his friends. "Mom, Grandpa, did you see? I drove the whole course without any help. The adults turned to Liam, their faces wreathed in smiles. James knelt down beside his grandson's wheelchair. "That's fantastic, champ. I'm so proud of you." Liam beamed, then noticed Ryan. "Hey, Ryan, did you come to see my new Ferrari?" Ryan laughed. "You bet I did, buddy. But I also came to share some exciting news. How would you like to help other kids get cool cars like yours?" As Ryan explained the expanded Community Wheels program in terms Liam could understand, the boy's eyes grew wide with excitement. "You mean I can help other kids be happy like me?" Emma knelt beside her son, stroking his hair gently. "That's right, sweetheart. And there's something else. The doctors think they might have a new way to help you feel better. Would you like to try it?" Liam's face grew serious for a moment, then broke into a determined smile. "If it means I can help more kids and maybe drive a real Ferrari someday, then yes." The room filled with laughter and tears of joy. As Liam's friends gathered around, curious about the excitement, James found himself marveling at the scene before him. From one act of love had sprung a wellspring of hope, not just for Liam, but for countless others. Later that evening, after Liam had been tucked into bed, exhausted but happy, James sat on the porch with Emma. The night was warm, filled with the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant sounds of the city. "Dad," Emma said softly, "I owe you an apology. When you first told us about the lottery win, about buying the Ferrari, I thought you'd lost your mind. I was worried about what people would think, about how it would change us. But now," James squeezed his daughter's hand, "now you see that true wealth isn't about money or possessions. It's about the lives we touch, the love we share." Emma nodded, leaning her head on her father's shoulder. "I just hope Liam understands how lucky he is to have you as a grandfather," James chuckled. "I'm the lucky one, sweetheart. Liam has taught me more about courage and joy than I could ever teach him." As they sat in comfortable silence, James reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point, the challenges they had faced, the unexpected turns their lives had taken, yet through it all, the love that bound their family together had only grown stronger. In the distance, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Emma pointed it out, reminding James of a night long ago when he had wished upon a star for the happiness and well-being of his family. As he closed his eyes and made another wish, he realized that sometimes the most extraordinary dreams do come true, just not always in the ways we expect. The story of James Carter, Liam, and the Ferrari was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to touch, more dreams to fulfill. But with the strength of family, the support of their community, and the power of love, they were ready to face whatever the future might bring. As the night deepened and the stars twinkled overhead, the Ferrari sat in its specially built garage, no longer just a car, but a symbol of hope, a catalyst for change, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single act of love. As autumn leaves began to paint the city in shades of gold and crimson, the Carter family found themselves on the cusp of new beginnings. The past few months had been a whirlwind of activity, challenges, and unexpected joys. On a crisp Saturday morning, James Carter stood in the driveway, carefully polishing the gleaming red Ferrari. The car had become more than just a vehicle. It was a symbol of their journey, a tangible reminder of how far they'd come. "Grandpa," Liam's excited voice carried from the house. "Is it time yet?" James chuckled, giving the car one final buff. "Almost, champ. Just putting on the finishing touches." Today was a special day. Liam's first official outing in the Ferrari since his health had begun to improve. The new treatment, part of the clinical trial they'd been fortunate enough to join, had shown promising results. While Liam still had a long road ahead, his energy levels had increased and the pain had diminished significantly. Emma appeared in the doorway, pushing Liam's wheelchair. The boy was practically vibrating with excitement, his eyes locked on the Ferrari. "Mum, look, Grandpa made it so shiny." "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Emma agreed, her eyes meeting James's over Liam's head. The gratitude and love in her gaze spoke volumes. As James helped Liam into the specially modified passenger seat, ensuring he was comfortable and secure, a car pulled up in front of the house. Ryan stepped out, waving cheerfully. "Hey everyone, ready for the big day?" Ryan had become an integral part of their lives, his enthusiasm and kindness a constant source of support. "Ryan," Liam called out, "are you coming with us to the Community Wheels event?" Ryan nodded, grinning. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy. Mrs. Woodward is meeting us there with some very special guests." As they prepared to leave, neighbors began to emerge from their homes. What had once been curious and sometimes judgmental glances had transformed into warm smiles and waves of encouragement. The community had rallied around the Carters, inspired by their story and the positive changes it had brought to so many lives. The drive to the event was filled with Liam's excited chatter, punctuated by the occasional rev of the Ferrari's engine, a sound that never failed to bring a smile to the boy's face. James drove carefully, acutely aware of the precious cargo he carried. They arrived at a large park that had been transformed for the Community Wheels event. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the sound of laughter and music filled the air. Families milled about, many clearly beneficiaries of the program, their faces shining with hope and gratitude. As James carefully helped Liam out of the car and into his wheelchair, they were greeted by a smiling Abigail Woodward. "Welcome! We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." Liam beamed up at her. "Mrs. Woodward, did you see? We came in the Ferrari." Abigail knelt down to Liam's level. "I did see, and it looks even more beautiful than I remembered. Are you ready to help us make some other families very happy today?" Liam nodded enthusiastically. "I can't wait." As they made their way through the event, James was struck by the atmosphere of joy and community. Families were being presented with keys to reliable vehicles. Job training certificates were being awarded, and everywhere he looked, he saw hope in people's eyes. They approached a small stage where several important-looking individuals were gathered. Abigail guided them forward. "Mr. Carter, Emma, Liam, I'd like you to meet some people. This is the CEO of the auto manufacturer who's partnered with us, and next to him is the head of the National MS Society." Introductions were made, hands were shaken, and James found himself engaged in conversation about the future of Community Wheels and the advancements in MS research. But his attention was constantly drawn back to Liam, who was surrounded by other children, some in wheelchairs, others not, all listening intently as he regaled them with stories about his Ferrari and his improving health. As the official ceremony began, James was asked to say a few words. Standing at the podium, looking out over the sea of faces, some familiar, many new, all united in a common cause, he felt a swell of emotion. "Mum, when I bought that Ferrari for my grandson," he began, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat, "I thought I was just fulfilling a child's dream. I never imagined it would lead to all of this. But looking around today, I realize that dreams have a power all their own. They can inspire us, unite us, and drive us to create change in ways we never thought possible." He went on to speak about the importance of community, of hope, and of never underestimating the impact of a single act of kindness. As he concluded his speech, the applause was thunderous, but for James, the most important reaction was the look of pride on Liam's face. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. More families received vehicles, Liam made new friends, and plans were discussed for expanding Community Wheels even further. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, James found a quiet moment to reflect. He watched as Emma chatted animatedly with some of the researchers from the MS Society, her face alight with hope for Liam's future. He saw Ryan tirelessly ensuring that every detail of the event ran smoothly, his dedication unwavering. And there was Liam at the center of it all, his smile brighter than James had seen in years. A hand on his shoulder startled James from his reverie. He turned to find Abigail standing beside him, a knowing smile on her face. "Quite a journey we've been on, Mr. Carter," she said softly. James nodded, his eyes misting slightly. "Indeed it has been, Mrs. Woodward. I never could have imagined." "None of us could have," Abigail agreed. "But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with the simplest acts of love." As they stood there, watching the community they'd helped build flourish around them, James felt a profound sense of gratitude. The Ferrari that had started it all gleamed in the fading sunlight, no longer just a luxury car, but a beacon of hope, a symbol of the incredible power of dreams, love, and community. The story of James Carter, Liam, and the Ferrari was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to touch, more dreams to fulfill. But as the day drew to a close and families began to head home, there was a palpable sense of optimism in the air. For James, as he helped a tired but happy Liam back into the Ferrari for the drive home, he knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as a community, united by the extraordinary journey that had begun with a grandfather's love and a child's dream. As the Ferrari's engine roared to life, James couldn't help but smile. The road ahead was full of promise, and they were just getting started. As winter approached, bringing with it a chill in the air and the promise of snow, the Carter family found themselves navigating yet another unexpected turn in their journey. The Community Wheels initiative had grown beyond their wildest dreams, touching lives across the country, but with growth came new challenges and responsibilities. One crisp morning, James sat at his kitchen table, poring over a stack of documents. The doorbell rang, and he answered it to find Ryan and Abigail Woodward standing on his porch, their expressions a mix of excitement and concern. "Mr. Carter," Abigail began as they settled in the living room, "we've received an offer that could change everything." James leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of offer?" Ryan took over, his voice brimming with barely contained excitement. "A major national foundation wants to partner with Community Wheels. They're offering substantial funding to expand the program nationwide, but..." He hesitated, exchanging a glance with Abigail. "But," James prompted. Abigail sighed. "They want you to be the face of the campaign, Mr. Carter. You and Liam. It would involve media appearances, speaking engagements, possibly even relocating to oversee the national headquarters." James sat back, stunned. The implications of such a move were enormous. It could mean reaching so many more people, helping countless families, but it would also mean uprooting their lives, thrusting Liam further into the spotlight. As if on cue, the sound of Liam's wheelchair could be heard coming down the hallway. "Grandpa, is someone here? I thought I heard voices." Liam's face lit up when he saw Ryan and Abigail. "Hey, are we planning another event?" James smiled at his grandson, marveling at how much stronger he looked these days. The new treatments were working wonders, though Liam still had a long way to go. "Not exactly, champ. We're discussing something important that affects all of us. Why don't you join us?" As they explained the situation to Liam in terms he could understand, James watched his grandson's face carefully. He saw excitement flash in Liam's eyes at the idea of helping more people, but also a flicker of uncertainty at the thought of such big changes. "What do you think, Liam?" James asked gently. "This would be a big step for all of us." Liam was quiet for a moment, his young face scrunched in thought. "Could we still keep the Ferrari?" he asked finally, causing the adults to chuckle. "Of course, sweetheart," Emma said, having joined them midway through the conversation. "The Ferrari goes where we go." Liam nodded, then looked at each of them in turn. I think we should do it. If it means we can help more kids like me, and more families who need help, then we should do it." James felt a surge of pride at his grandson's words. Even faced with such a big decision, Liam's first thought was for others. Over the next few weeks, the Carter family found themselves in a whirlwind of activity. There were meetings with lawyers, discussions with doctors about continuing Liam's treatment in a new location, and long conversations about what this move would mean for their family. Through it all, the Ferrari sat in their driveway, a constant reminder of where their journey had begun and how far they had come. As the day of their departure approached, James took Liam for one last drive around their neighborhood. The streets were lined with well-wishers, neighbors who had become friends, holding signs of support and gratitude. "Grandpa," Liam said as they cruised down familiar streets, "do you think we're doing the right thing?" James glanced at his grandson, seeing not just the excited boy who loved fast cars, but a young man growing wise beyond his years. "I think we're following our hearts, champ, and that's always the right thing to do." The day of the move arrived, crisp and clear. As the moving trucks were loaded and final goodbyes were said, James stood in the driveway, keys to the Ferrari in hand. This car, once just an extravagant gift, had become so much more. It was a symbol of hope, of dreams realized, of the power of love to change lives. As they prepared to leave, a familiar face appeared. Andrew, the former dealership manager whose actions had inadvertently set this whole journey in motion, approached hesitantly. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I just wanted to thank you. Your forgiveness, your example, it changed my life. I'm heading up the local Community Wheels chapter now, and I promise to carry on the work you started here." James shook Andrew's hand warmly, marveling at how far they had all come. "Thank you, Andrew. Remember, it's not about never making mistakes. It's about how we choose to rectify them." As the Carter family pulled out of their driveway for the last time, Liam in the passenger seat of the Ferrari and Emma following in her car, James felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness at leaving behind the life they had known, but also excitement for the new adventures that lay ahead. The Ferrari's engine purred as they hit the open road, the sun glinting off its polished surface. In the rearview mirror, James could see the Community Wheels, moving trucks following behind, carrying not just their belongings, but the hopes and dreams of countless families they had yet to meet. As they crossed the city limits, Liam turned to his grandfather, his face alight with excitement and determination. "Ready for our next big adventure, Grandpa?" James smiled, feeling the weight of the responsibility they were taking on, but also the incredible lightness of knowing they were following the right path. "Ready as I'll ever be, champ. Let's go change some more lives." The Ferrari accelerated, carrying them towards new horizons, new challenges, and new opportunities to spread hope and kindness. The story of James Carter, Liam, and the Ferrari that started it all was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it felt like their real journey was just beginning. As the city faded in the distance and open roads stretched out before them, James knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, as a family, as a team, united by love and driven by the desire to make a difference in the world. The Ferrari roared down the highway, not just a car anymore, but a chariot of hope, carrying with it the promise of better tomorrows for all those whose lives it would touch. And for James, Emma, and Liam, it was the start of the greatest adventure of their lives. The city skyline loomed ahead, a forest of glass and steel piercing the horizon. James Carter guided the Ferrari smoothly through the increasing traffic, stealing glances at Liam, who sat wide-eyed in the passenger seat. After days on the road, they were finally approaching their new home, the headquarters of the now national Community Wheels Initiative. "Look, Grandpa," Liam exclaimed, pointing at a massive billboard. It featured a larger-than-life image of the red Ferrari, with Liam's smiling face beaming down at the city. The words, "Drive Change, Community Wheels," were emblazoned across the bottom. James felt a mixture of pride and trepidation at the sight. Their story had indeed become larger than life, and with it came a weight of responsibility he was still coming to terms with. As they navigated through the bustling streets, following the GPS to their new address, James couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed in such a short time. The modest life he had chosen after his lottery win seemed like a distant memory now. Yet, the values that had guided that decision, humility, generosity, and family, remained at the core of everything they were doing. They pulled up to a sleek, modern building with Community Wheels National Headquarters written in bold letters above the entrance. A small crowd had gathered, including Abigail Woodward and Ryan, who had flown ahead to prepare for their arrival. As James helped Liam into his wheelchair, Emma pulled up behind them, looking both exhausted and exhilarated from the long journey. "Well, this is it," she said, taking in the sight of their new workplace and home. "Our new life begins here." Abigail approached, her face wreathed in smiles. "Welcome to your new home. We can't tell you how excited everyone is to have you here." As they made their way inside, greeted by applause from the assembled staff, James felt a sudden wave of uncertainty. Were they really ready for this? Could they live up to the expectations of so many people counting on them? His doubts must have shown on his face because Ryan sidled up to him, speaking in a low voice. "Don't worry, Mr. Carter. We're all in this together. You've already changed so many lives just by being yourself and following your heart." James nodded gratefully, drawing strength from the young man's words. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. There were meetings with corporate partners, interviews with media outlets, and countless details to iron out as they settled into their new roles. James found himself thrust into the position of spokesperson and visionary leader, a role he approached with the same down-to-earth sincerity that had characterized his entire journey. Liam, despite the demands of his ongoing treatment, threw himself into the work with enthusiasm. He became the heart of the organization, his resilience and optimism inspiring everyone around him. His health continued to improve, thanks to the cutting-edge treatments made possible by the increased funding and awareness their story had generated. One evening, about a month after their move, James found Liam sitting in his wheelchair on the balcony of their new apartment, gazing out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts, champ?" James asked, settling into a chair beside his grandson. Liam was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Grandpa, do you ever miss our old life? The quiet one before all of this?" James considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Life was simpler then. But you know what? I wouldn't trade what we're doing now for anything in the world. We're making a real difference, Liam, and that's worth all the challenges and changes." Liam nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "I was thinking about the day you brought home that toy Ferrari. Remember? Before all of this started, I never could have imagined where that little car would take us." James chuckled, recalling that pivotal moment. Life has a funny way of taking us on unexpected journeys, doesn't it? As they sat there, enjoying the view and each other's company, James's phone buzzed with a message from Emma. She was downstairs in the garage, asking them to come down. Curious, James and Liam made their way to the elevator and down to the building's spacious garage. There, they found Emma standing next to the Ferrari, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I've been thinking," she said as they approached. "We've been so busy with everything, we haven't taken the time to really enjoy this beautiful machine. What do you say we take a little joyride? Just the three of us." Liam's face lit up with excitement. "Really? Can we?" James felt a surge of spontaneity, a reminder of the impulsive decision that had started this whole adventure. Why not? Let's do it. As they settled into the Ferrari, James behind the wheel, Liam in the passenger seat, and Emma in the back, there was a palpable sense of excitement. This wasn't about business or obligations or the weight of their new responsibilities. This was about family, about joy, about remembering why they had embarked on this journey in the first place. As the Ferrari roared to life and they pulled out onto the city streets, James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The open road beckoned, promising freedom and adventure, if only for a few hours. Liam's laughter filled the car as they accelerated, the city lights blurring around them. Emma leaned forward, squeezing both their shoulders, her face alight with happiness. In that moment, as the Ferrari carried them through the night, James realized that amidst all the changes, all the new responsibilities and challenges, the most important things remained constant. The love that bound their family together, the desire to help others, and the simple joy of sharing moments like this. These were the true driving forces of their journey. As they cruised down the highway, the city fading behind them and open roads stretching ahead, James knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The Ferrari, once just a dream and then a catalyst for change, had become a symbol of their unbreakable family bond and their ongoing mission to spread hope and kindness wherever their journey took them. The adventure was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it felt like it was just beginning. And as the Ferrari sped into the night, carrying the Carter family towards new horizons, the possibilities seemed as endless as the open road before them. As the months passed, the Carter family settled into their new roles at the helm of the National Community Wheels Initiative. The organization grew rapidly, expanding its reach to cities across the country. With each new chapter opened, more families found hope, more lives were changed, and the ripple effect of their initial act of kindness continued to spread. However, with growth came new challenges. James found himself navigating the complex world of corporate partnerships, government regulations, and public relations. The simple life he had once led seemed a distant memory as he attended board meetings and gave speeches to large audiences. One particularly trying day, James sat in his office, poring over financial reports. The pressure of managing such a large organization was beginning to wear on him. A knock on the door provided a welcome interruption. "Come in," he called, looking up to see Emma enter, a concerned expression on her face. "Dad," she began, settling into a chair across from him, "we need to talk about Liam." James felt a flicker of worry. "Is everything okay? Has there been a change in his condition?" Emma shook her head quickly. No, his health is still improving. It's just, he's feeling a bit overwhelmed. The constant interviews, the public appearances, I think it's starting to take a toll on him." James leaned back in his chair, a wave of guilt washing over him. In the whirlwind of their new life, had he lost sight of what was truly important? "You're right," he said softly. "Or I've been so caught up in making this work, in living up to everyone's expectations, that I haven't been paying enough attention to what matters most." As if on cue, there was another knock on the door. This time, it was Ryan who entered, looking slightly flustered. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation. One of our major donors is threatening to pull out unless we agree to some questionable terms." James sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. But as he looked at the concern on Emma's face and thought of Liam, he made a decision. "Ryan, tell them we'll discuss it tomorrow. Right now, I need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the day, and Liam's too." Both Emma and Ryan looked surprised, but James was already standing up, a determined glint in his eye. "Emma, call Liam. Tell him to meet us in the garage in 15 minutes. We're going for a drive." Half an hour later, the Ferrari was speeding down the highway, leaving the city and its demands behind. Liam sat in the passenger seat, his face brightening with each mile that passed. Emma followed in her car, a smile playing on her lips as she watched her father and son reconnect. They drove for hours, stopping at a small diner for lunch, then finding a quiet spot overlooking a lake. As they sat on the hood of the Ferrari, enjoying the peace and the view, James turned to Liam. "Champ, I owe you an apology," he began. "I've been so focused on making Community Wheels a success that I forgot the most important thing, you. This all started because I wanted to bring joy into your life, not stress." Liam leaned against his grandfather, a thoughtful expression on his young face. "It's okay, Grandpa. I know we're helping a lot of people. It's just, sometimes I miss when it was just us, you know." James nodded, pulling Liam close. "I know, buddy, and that's going to change. From now on, we're going to make sure we have time like this just for us, no matter how busy things get." As they sat there, watching the sun begin to set over the lake, James felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in months. Yes, their work was important, but family came first, always. The drive back to the city was filled with laughter and plans for future escapes. By the time they pulled into the garage of their building, all three Carters felt rejuvenated and reconnected. The next morning, James called a meeting with the entire Community Wheels staff. Standing before them, with Liam and Emma by his side, he addressed the room. "I want to thank you all for your incredible work," he began. "What we've accomplished together is amazing. But I think we've lost sight of something important, the personal touch that made this initiative special in the first place." He went on to outline a new direction for the organization. They would slow their expansion, focusing instead on deepening their impact in existing communities. More importantly, they would refocus on the stories of the individuals they helped, never losing sight of the human element that had sparked this journey. As the meeting concluded, there was a sense of renewed purpose in the room. The staff dispersed, energized by the new vision. Ryan approached James, a look of admiration on his face. "That was inspiring, Mr. Carter, and I think it's exactly what we needed." James smiled, resting a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Sometimes we need to take a step back to remember why we started this journey in the first place." As they left the conference room, James caught sight of the Ferrari through a window, gleaming in the morning sun. It stood as a reminder of the power of a single act of love and the importance of never losing sight of what truly matters. The challenges weren't over. Running a national organization would always come with its share of difficulties, but James felt ready to face them, grounded once more in the values that had guided him from the start: family, compassion, and the simple joy of making a difference in someone's life. As they walked towards their offices, Liam looked up at his grandfather. "Grandpa, can we go for another drive this weekend?" James chuckled, feeling lighter than he had in months. "You bet, champ. In fact, why don't we make it a regular thing? Every weekend, just us and the open road." Liam's face lit up, and in that moment, James knew they were back on the right track. The Ferrari wasn't just a car, or even just a symbol anymore. It was a promise to never forget the love and the dream that had started it all. As they settled into their day, the future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. There would be more challenges, more growth, and undoubtedly more changes. But with their priorities realigned and their family bonds strengthened, the Carters were ready for whatever lay ahead. The journey that had begun with a grandfather's love and a child's dream was far from over. In many ways, it felt like a new chapter was just beginning. As spring bloomed across the city, bringing with it a sense of renewal and fresh beginnings, the Carter family found themselves adapting to their recalibrated approach to life and work. The changes James had implemented in Community Wheels were beginning to bear fruit, with a renewed focus on personal stories and deeper community involvement. One sunny Saturday morning, James and Liam prepared for their now weekly drive. These outings had become sacred time for grandfather and grandson, a chance to reconnect away from the pressures of their public roles. As James helped Liam into the passenger seat of the Ferrari, he noticed a new strength in his grandson's movements. The continued medical treatments, funded by their efforts, were showing remarkable results. "Ready for an adventure, champ?" James asked, settling into the driver's seat. Liam's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Always, Grandpa. Where are we going today?" James grinned mischievously. "I thought we'd try something a little different. How about we visit one of our Community Wheels families?" Liam's face lit up. While he had met many beneficiaries of their program at official events, this would be the first time they'd make a personal, unofficial visit. As they cruised through the city streets, James filled Liam in on the family they were going to visit. The Thompsons had received a car through Community Wheels 6 months ago, allowing the single mother, Sarah, to secure a better job and provide for her 2 children. They pulled up to a modest apartment complex on the outskirts of the city. As they got out of the car, with James helping Liam into his wheelchair, they noticed a small crowd gathering. The Ferrari always drew attention, but there was something different about these onlookers. They were smiling, some even waving in recognition. Sarah Thompson emerged from the building, her face a mixture of surprise and joy. "Mr. Carter, Liam, what an unexpected honor." Behind her, two children peeked out shyly, Tommy, age 10, and Lisa, age 8. Their eyes widened at the sight of the Ferrari. James shook Sarah's hand warmly. "We were in the neighborhood and thought we'd stop by to see how you and the kids are doing. I hope we're not intruding." Sarah shook her head emphatically. "Not at all. Please, come in. It's not much, but it's home." As they entered the small apartment, James was struck by the warmth and love that permeated the space. Photos of the children lined the walls, and an Employee of the Month certificate with Sarah's name hung proudly in the living room. While the adults chatted, Liam found himself drawn into conversation with Tommy and Lisa. Soon, the sound of children's laughter filled the apartment as Liam regaled them with stories of his adventures with the Ferrari. James watched the scene with a full heart. This, he realized, was what Community Wheels was truly about, not just providing transportation, but fostering connections, building communities, and changing lives in tangible ways. As they prepared to leave, Sarah pulled James aside, her eyes brimming with tears. "Mr. Carter, I don't know if you realize how much you've changed our lives. That car, it's not just a vehicle, it's hope, it's opportunity, it's a chance for a better future for my kids." James felt a lump form in his throat. "Sarah, it's families like yours that inspire us to keep going. You're the real heroes here, facing challenges head-on and never giving up." Back in the Ferrari, as they drove home, Liam was uncharacteristically quiet. James glanced over, concerned. "Everything okay, champ?" Liam nodded slowly. "Grandpa, I think I understand now why we do all this, why it's so important. Seeing Tommy and Lisa, hearing their mum's story, it makes all the hard stuff worth it." James felt a surge of pride. His grandson was growing not just in health, but in wisdom and empathy. "That's right, Liam. Every family we help, every life we touch, it all started with that first ride we took in this car. Remember?" Liam grinned. "How could I forget? Best day of my life." As they pulled into their garage, Emma was waiting for them, a curious expression on her face. "How was your drive? You two look like you've had quite an adventure." Over dinner, James and Liam recounted their visit to the Thompsons. As they shared the story, James could see a new light in Emma's eyes, a renewed sense of purpose and commitment to their cause. Later that evening, as James stood on the balcony of their apartment, looking out over the city, he felt a deep sense of contentment. The past year had been a whirlwind of changes, challenges, and growth. But at its core, their mission remained the same: to spread hope, one family at a time. He thought about the Ferrari, now resting in the garage below. What had started as a grandiose gesture of love had become a symbol of so much more. It was a reminder of the power of dreams, the strength of family bonds, and the incredible impact that one act of kindness could have. As he turned to go back inside, James caught sight of a shooting star streaking across the night sky. He smiled, making a silent wish. Not for himself, but for all the families out there who were still struggling, still hoping for their own miracle. The journey that had begun with a lottery win and a Ferrari was far from over. In fact, James realized it was evolving in ways he could never have imagined. But with Liam's growing strength, Emma's unwavering support, and the knowledge that they were making a real difference in people's lives, he felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The Ferrari that had started it all was more than just a car now. It was a promise to keep dreaming, to keep loving, and to keep driving forward, no matter what obstacles they might face. As James joined his family inside, he knew that the greatest adventure of their lives was still unfolding, and he couldn't wait to see where the road would take them next. As summer approached, bringing with it warm breezes and long golden evenings, the Carter family found themselves on the cusp of a significant milestone. It had been exactly 1 year since James had purchased the Ferrari for Liam, setting in motion a chain of events that had transformed not only their lives, but the lives of countless others across the country. To commemorate this anniversary, James had a special surprise planned. He had arranged for a grand celebration at the very dealership where it all began, bringing together staff, beneficiaries, and supporters of Community Wheels from all over the nation. The morning of the event, James knocked gently on Liam's bedroom door. "Rise and shine, champ. It's a big day." Liam emerged, rubbing sleep from his eyes but with an excited grin on his face. "Is it time, Grandpa?" James nodded, his heart swelling with pride and love. Liam had made remarkable progress over the past year. While he still used his wheelchair for longer distances, he was now able to take short walks with the aid of crutches, a development that had seemed impossible just 12 months ago. As they prepared for the day, Emma joined them, her eyes misty with emotion. "I can't believe it's been a year," she said softly, adjusting Liam's collar. "And so much has changed." The family made their way to the garage where the Ferrari waited, gleaming as brilliantly as the day they first saw it. As always, the sight of the car brought smiles to their faces, each of them remembering the joy and hope it had come to represent. The drive to the dealership was filled with excited chatter and reminiscing. As they approached, they could see that the normally sleek showroom had been transformed. Colorful banners hung from the facade, and a red carpet led to the entrance. A crowd had already gathered, a mix of familiar faces and new friends made along their journey. Abigail Woodward stood at the entrance, beaming as the Ferrari pulled up. "Welcome back," she said warmly as James helped Liam out of the car. "It's so wonderful to see you all." Inside, the showroom had been converted into a celebration space. Photos chronicling the past year's achievements lined the walls, and at the center stood a giant cake in the shape of the Ferrari. But what caught James's eye was the group of people gathered near the back. Families whose lives had been changed by Community Wheels, all wearing bright smiles and t-shirts with the organization's logo. As James, Emma, and Liam made their way through the crowd, they were met with handshakes, hugs, and words of gratitude. It was overwhelming, seeing the tangible impact of their work all in one place. Ryan, who had become an integral part of their team and family, approached with a microphone. "Mr. Carter, would you like to say a few words?" James nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the moment. As he took the microphone, a hush fell over the room. "A year ago," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I walked into this dealership with a simple goal, to bring a smile to my grandson's face. I never could have imagined where that single act would lead us." He paused, looking around the room at the faces of those whose lives they had touched. Community Wheels isn't just about cars, it's about hope, it's about second chances. It's about the incredible things that can happen when we reach out to help one another. As James continued his speech, Liam watched his grandfather with a mixture of pride and awe. He thought back to that first day, when the Ferrari had seemed like the most amazing gift in the world. Now, he understood that the true gift had been the journey it had taken them on, the lives they had touched, and the love that had grown stronger with every challenge they faced. When James finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. As applause filled the room, Liam surprised everyone by standing up from his wheelchair and, with the help of his crutches, making his way to his grandfather's side. "I'd like to say something too," Liam said, his young voice clear and confident. James handed him the microphone, his heart bursting with pride. When my grandpa bought me this Ferrari, I thought it was the best thing that could ever happen to me," Liam began. "But I was wrong. The best thing is being able to help other people, to make their lives better. That's better than any car, even a Ferrari." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Emma rushed forward to embrace her son and father, the three of them holding each other tightly as cameras flashed around them. As the celebration continued, with cake being served and stories being shared, James found a quiet moment to slip away. He made his way to the spot where the Ferrari had first stood, the place where their incredible journey had begun. Abigail joined him, a knowing smile on her face. "Quite a different scene from a year ago, isn't it?" she said softly. James nodded, his eyes misty. "I came in here thinking I was just buying a car. Instead, I drove out with a whole new purpose in life." Abigail placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've changed so many lives, James, including your own." As they stood there, reflecting on the past year, James felt a tugging on his sleeve. He looked down to see Liam standing with his crutches, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Grandpa," Liam said, "I was thinking, maybe it's time for another surprise. Not for me this time, but for all the kids out there who need hope." James knelt down to Liam's level, intrigued. "What did you have in mind, champ?" Liam grinned. "Well, we have this amazing car. What if we used it to raise money for community wheels? We could auction off rides or do a cross-country tour. Think of how many more families we could help." James felt his heart swell with pride and love. His grandson, once the recipient of a grand gesture of love, was now thinking of ways to pay that love forward. "Liam," James said, pulling him into a hug, "I think that's the best idea I've heard all year." As they rejoined the celebration, James knew that their journey was far from over. In fact, it felt like they were at the beginning of a whole new chapter. The Ferrari that had started it all was no longer just a symbol of one grandfather's love for his grandson. It had become a beacon of hope, a vehicle for change, and a testament to the incredible things that can happen when love and determination come together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the dealership, James looked at his family, Emma, Liam, and all the extended family they had gained through community wheels. He realized that the true luxury in life wasn't found in fast cars or material possessions. It was found in the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the love we share. The Ferrari gleamed in the fading light, ready for whatever adventure lay ahead. And the Carter family, along with their ever-growing community, was ready too. They had come full circle back to where it all began, only to find that their journey was really just beginning. As they prepared to head home, James knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, driven by love, fueled by hope, and always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. The road ahead was wide open, full of promise and possibility, and they couldn't wait to see where it would take them next. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.